I poisoned my son-in-law on a Tuesday morning in October, and I'd do it again. There. I said it. And before you judge me, before you click away thinking I'm some kind of monster, let me tell you something. Sometimes monsters are made, not born. Sometimes they're created in the quiet corners of suburban houses where no one thinks to look. Sometimes they wear the face of a devoted grandmother who bakes apple pies and volunteers at the library. That was me. That is me. My name is Eleanor Whitmore, I'm 63 years old, and I live in a modest two-story house in Cedar Falls, Iowa, where everyone knows everyone and secrets are supposed to stay buried. But some secrets claw their way up through the dirt. I want you to do something for me right now. Leave a comment and tell me where you're watching this from. Because what I'm about to tell you, what really happened in my home, it could happen anywhere. It could be happening in the house next to yours right now. And when you're done here, check the description box below. There are more stories like mine there, stories of women who were pushed too far, who found themselves at the edge of something dark and had to decide whether to step back or jump. I jumped. The morning I did it, the sky was that particular shade of grey that comes right before autumn turns to winter. The kind of grey that makes everything look washed out, like an old photograph that's been left in the sun too long. I remember standing in my kitchen, the same kitchen where I'd made countless breakfasts for my daughter Amy when she was growing up, where I taught her how to crack eggs without getting shell in the bowl, where I'd held her when her first boyfriend broke her heart, and I remember thinking how ordinary everything looked. The yellow curtains with the tiny blue flowers that I'd sewn myself 20 years ago. The ceramic rooster collection on the windowsill that my late husband Thomas had always teased me about. The coffee maker burbling away like it did every morning at 6:30. Everything looked so normal. But my hands were shaking as I reached for the small glass vial in my cardigan pocket. You need to understand something about me. I'm not impulsive. I've never been impulsive. I'm the woman who makes lists for her lists, who plans Thanksgiving dinner in September, who keeps emergency supplies in the basement that are rotated and inventoried every 6 months. Thomas used to joke that I could run a military operation from our living room. So what I did that morning, what I'd been planning for 3 weeks, it wasn't some sudden snap of sanity. It was calculated, deliberate, necessary. Because Derek Patterson had been hurting me for 8 months, and no one believed me. Let me back up. Let me tell you how a woman like me, a woman who'd never even gotten a speeding ticket, who said grace before meals and donated to the church fundraiser every year, ended up holding rat poison over a cup of English breakfast tea at 6:35 on a Tuesday morning, waiting for her son-in-law to come downstairs. It started the way these things always start, I suppose. Slowly. Almost imperceptibly. Like water eroding stone. You don't notice it happening until suddenly there's a canyon where solid ground used to be. Derek came into our lives 4 years ago at Amy's office Christmas party. She was 31 then, working as a paralegal at a law firm downtown, and she'd brought home stories about this new associate lawyer who was smart and funny and made everyone laugh. When she finally introduced us, I'll admit, he seemed perfect. Tall, well-dressed, with that easy confidence that comes from growing up with money and opportunity. Sandy brown hair, green eyes, a smile that showed all his teeth. He shook Thomas's hand firmly, brought me flowers, yellow roses, my favorite, and complimented the pot roast I'd made for dinner. Mrs. Whitmore, he'd said, if Amy inherited even half your cooking skills, I'm a lucky man. Thomas had liked him immediately. My husband had died 2 years later from a heart attack. Sudden, devastating, leaving me alone in this house with nothing but memories and the dull ache of absence. By then, Amy and Derek were married. They'd had a small ceremony at the courthouse because Amy said she didn't want a fuss, but I think Derek just didn't want to spend the money. I'd noticed little things by then. The way he'd check the receipt after we went out to dinner, his eyes narrowing if he thought the tip was too generous. The way he'd make comments about Amy's spending, even though she made her own money. The way his smile sometimes didn't quite reach those green eyes. But I told myself I was being paranoid. Overprotective. Every mother thinks no one is good enough for her daughter, right? If you've ever ignored that little voice in your head, that tiny alarm bell that tells you something is wrong, you know exactly how I felt in those early days. I wish I'd listened. I wish I'd trusted my instincts instead of dismissing them as the anxieties of a grieving widow who was afraid of losing her daughter to marriage. After Thomas died, Amy suggested I sell the house and move in with them. Mom, it's too much space for one person, she'd said, her eyes full of concern and love. And we have that entire upstairs suite that's just sitting empty. You could have your own space, your own bathroom, but you wouldn't be alone. I'd resisted at first. I didn't want to be a burden. I didn't want to be that mother-in-law who interfered and overstayed her welcome. But the house felt so empty without Thomas. His absence filled every room, sat in his favorite chair, echoed in the silence where his laughter used to be. And Amy needed me too. She was pregnant with their first child, my first grandchild, and she was scared and excited and wanted her mother close. So I moved into their house in Cedar Falls, into the upstairs suite with the slanted ceiling and the window that looked out over the backyard maple tree. I sold most of my furniture, packed up a lifetime of memories into boxes, and told myself this was a new chapter. A chance to be close to my daughter and my future grandchild. A chance to not be so desperately alone. That was 18 months ago. For the first few months, it was wonderful. I helped Amy through her pregnancy, rubbing her feet when they swelled, making her ginger tea for the morning sickness, going with her to doctor's appointments when Derek had to work late. Little Olivia was born on a snowy January morning, 7 pounds 3 ounces of perfect pink skin and dark hair, and I fell in love all over again. I'd forgotten what it felt like to hold a newborn, to feel that weight of absolute trust and vulnerability in your arms. I helped with the night feedings, changed countless diapers, sang the same lullabies I'd sung to Amy. Derek seemed grateful then. He'd come home from work exhausted, and I'd have dinner ready, Olivia clean and fed. "I don't know what we'd do without you, Eleanor," he'd say. Always Eleanor, never Mom or even Mrs. Whitmore anymore. Just Eleanor, like I was an employee. Maybe that's what I was to him. Free childcare and housekeeping. The first time it happened, Olivia was 4 months old. It was a Sunday afternoon in May, one of those perfect spring days where everything smells green and alive. Amy had taken Olivia to visit her friend Kelly who'd just had a baby, and Derek and I were alone in the house. I was in the kitchen making dinner, a chicken casserole, Derek's favorite, when he came in looking for the mail. "Did the electric bill come?" he asked, rifling through the stack of envelopes on the counter. "I think it's in there," I said, stirring the cream sauce. "I saw something from the utility company." He found it, opened it, and I heard the sharp intake of breath that meant the number was higher than he'd expected. I knew that sound. Thomas used to make it when property taxes came due. "Jesus Christ," Derek muttered. "Over $200. For 1 month." "Well, it has been warm," I offered. "The air conditioning." "The air conditioning that runs constantly because someone keeps setting the thermostat to 68 degrees. He turned to look at me, and there was something in his face I hadn't seen before. Something cold. "That's you, Eleanor. You and your hot flashes or whatever. You're running up our electricity bill because you can't just open a window." "I'm sorry," I said automatically. "I didn't realize." "Of course you didn't realize. You don't pay the bills. You just live here, eating our food, using our utilities, taking up space." The words hit me like a slap. I stood there with the wooden spoon in my hand, cream sauce dripping back into the pot, and felt my face go hot. Not from a hot flash. From shame. "I contribute," I said quietly. "I help with Olivia, I cook, I clean." "Yeah, and we provide you with a free place to live. A roof over your head. Do you know what it would cost to rent that suite you're living in? At least $800 a month, probably more. Plus utilities, plus food. You're getting a pretty sweet deal here, Eleanor." He left the kitchen then, taking the bill with him, and I stood there trying to breathe normally, trying to tell myself he was just stressed about money. Young couples worry about money. It was nothing personal. But it felt personal. That night, I barely touched my dinner. Amy noticed. "Mom, are you okay? You love this casserole." "Just not very hungry, sweetie," I'd said, smiling. "Maybe coming down with something." Derek had eaten 3 helpings. He didn't look at me once. If that had been the only incident, maybe I could have dismissed it. But it wasn't. Over the next few months, there were more comments. Little digs that felt like paper cuts, small enough that you could ignore each individual one, but they accumulated. They bled. "Eleanor, could you try to be quieter in the mornings? Some of us are trying to sleep." This said at 7 a.m., when I was making coffee in the kitchen directly below their bedroom. "Do you really need to do laundry every day? The water bill is insane." This said when I was washing Olivia's cloth diapers, which Amy had specifically requested because she wanted to be environmentally conscious. "Maybe you could eat less of the expensive stuff? The organic strawberries are for Olivia's purees." This said when he saw me making myself a smoothie with the strawberries I had personally bought at the farmer's market. Each comment delivered with that same cold smile, when Amy wasn't around to hear. I started keeping to my room more. Started waiting until I heard Derek leave for work before coming downstairs. Started buying my own groceries and keeping them in a mini-fridge I purchased for my suite. I told Amy I wanted more independence, that I didn't want to feel like I was imposing. She'd hugged me and said I could never impose, that this was my home too. But it didn't feel like my home. It felt like I was a guest who'd overstayed her welcome, and Derek was the hotel manager counting down the days until checkout. Then came the night that changed everything. The night I stopped making excuses for him. The night I realized that what was happening to me had a name, and that name was abuse. It was a Thursday in late July, the kind of summer night where the heat doesn't break even after the sun goes down. The air conditioning was struggling, and I'd opened the window in my room despite Derek's complaints about wasting cool air. I was reading in bed, a mystery novel, ironically enough, about a woman who disappeared and the detective trying to find her, when I heard Olivia start to cry downstairs. I checked my phone. 10:47. Amy would be exhausted. She'd been up since 5 that morning with the baby. Without thinking, I slipped on my robe and headed downstairs to help. The house was dark except for the nightlight in the hallway. I could hear Amy's voice in Olivia's nursery, soft and tired, singing a lullaby. I was about to turn around and go back upstairs. Amy had it handled, when I felt a hand grab my arm. I startled, turning to find Derek standing in the shadows by the bathroom door. He was in his pajama pants and nothing else, and I could smell the whiskey on his breath. He'd been drinking more lately. Amy had mentioned it, worried, saying he was stressed about a case at work. "Where do you think you're going?" His voice was low, almost a whisper, but there was an edge to it that made my skin prickle. "I heard Olivia," I said, trying to pull my arm free. His grip tightened. "I was just going to check if Amy needed help." "Amy doesn't need your help. Amy has me." "Derek, you're hurting me. Let go." He did, but only after a moment that stretched too long. In the dim light, I could see his face, the way his jaw was clenched, the hardness in his eyes. This wasn't just irritation. This was something darker. "You need to stop," he said, stepping closer. I backed up until I hit the wall. "Stop interfering. Stop hovering. Stop acting like this is your house and your baby. She's my granddaughter. She's our daughter. Ours. Not yours. You had your chance to be a mother, and you did fine, I guess, but now it's over. Amy has me now. Olivia has us. You're just extra. Extra. Like a spare part. Like something unnecessary that could be removed without anyone noticing." I felt tears prick my eyes and hated myself for it. I wouldn't cry in front of him. I wouldn't give him that satisfaction. "I live here too," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Amy invited me. This is my home." "No." Derek leaned in close enough that I could see the blood vessels in his eyes, smell the sour whiskey breath. "This is my house. Mine and Amy's. You're here because we allow it. Because Amy feels sorry for you. Because you're a lonely old woman with nowhere else to go." He pushed off the wall and walked away, back toward his and Amy's bedroom, leaving me standing there in the dark hallway with my heart hammering and my arm throbbing where his fingers had dug in. I went back to my room, locked the door, and sat on the edge of my bed for a long time. My hands were shaking. I pulled up the sleeve of my robe and looked at my arm in the lamplight. There were red marks already darkening to purple. 5 finger-shaped bruises. That's when I knew. This wasn't just about money or stress or an annoying mother-in-law. This was deliberate. This was cruelty. This was abuse. The word felt too big in my mind, like trying to swallow something too large. Abuse was what happened to other people. Abuse was dramatic, black eyes and broken bones and police reports. Abuse wasn't this quiet, insidious thing that happened in the dark hallways of a nice house in Cedar Falls, Iowa. Abuse didn't happen to 63-year-old grandmothers who made casseroles and donated to charity. Except it did. It was. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed watching the shadows move across the ceiling, listening to the house settle around me, and I thought about Thomas. God, I missed him. Not just the big things, his laugh, his warmth, the way he'd pull me close in the middle of the night, but the small things. The way he'd made me feel safe. The way he'd made me feel seen. Like I mattered. Like I took up exactly the right amount of space in the world. With Thomas gone and Derek here, I felt like I was disappearing. Like I was becoming less solid, less real, less present. Like I was turning into a ghost in my own life. The next morning, I told Amy. I waited until Derek left for work, until I heard his car pull out of the driveway, and then I went downstairs where she was feeding Olivia in the high chair. The bruises on my arm had deepened overnight, dark purple thumbprint, yellowing around the edges. Amy, honey, I need to talk to you about something. She looked up, saw my face, and immediately set down the baby spoon. Mom, what's wrong? I sat down at the kitchen table, suddenly unsure how to begin. How do you tell your daughter that her husband, the father of her child, the man she loves, is hurting you? How do you say those words without destroying everything? Last night, I started, when Olivia was crying. I came downstairs to help, and Derek. I pulled up my sleeve, showed her the bruises. He grabbed me. He said some things. Cruel things. Amy stared at my arm. I watched emotions flicker across her face, shock, confusion, disbelief. Then, horribly, something that looked like doubt. Mom, are you sure? I mean, Derek wouldn't, he's not like that. Amy, look at my arm. I know, but... She reached out, touched the bruises gently, then pulled back. You bruise easily. You always have. Remember when you bumped into the car door last month and had that huge bruise on your hip? This is different. These are finger marks. Amy, he hurt me. I watched my daughter's face close down, watched her retreat behind a wall I didn't know she'd built. What exactly did he say? I told her. All of it. The comments about money, the complaints about utilities, the way he spoke to me when she wasn't around. The cold anger in his voice last night, the way he'd backed me against the wall, made me feel trapped and small and afraid. When I finished, Amy was quiet for a long moment. Olivia banged her spoon on the high chair tray, oblivious to the tension in the room. Mom, Amy said finally, and her voice was careful, measured, like she was talking to someone fragile. Someone not quite reliable. Derek works really hard. He's under a lot of pressure at the firm, and money has been tight. Having another person in the house, even someone we love, it does add to the expenses. Maybe he's just stressed. So stress is an excuse for grabbing someone hard enough to leave bruises. I'm not saying it's an excuse. I'm just saying, maybe you misunderstood his tone. Maybe in the dark, he didn't realize he was holding your arm that tight. Did you tell him it hurt? I told him to let go. But did you tell him it hurt? That he was hurting you? I stared at my daughter, this woman I'd carried inside me for 9 months, this child I'd raised to be strong and independent and kind, and I didn't recognize her. Or maybe I did. Maybe I was seeing something I'd been afraid to see, that she'd learned to make excuses for men who hurt people. That she'd learned to doubt her own mother to protect her marriage. I'll talk to him, Amy said, standing up to wipe Olivia's face. I'm sure it's just a misunderstanding. Derek loves you, Mom. He calls you Eleanor because he respects you as an equal, not as a mother-in-law he has to bow to. And he's grateful you're here to help with Olivia. He tells me that all the time. Does he? Yes. But she didn't meet my eyes when she said it. That night at dinner, Derek was all charm. He asked about my day, complimented the meatloaf I'd made, played with Olivia until she giggled and kicked her feet. He didn't look at my arm, didn't acknowledge the conversation I knew Amy must have had with him. He acted like nothing had happened. And Amy acted right along with him. I sat there pushing peas around my plate and realized something terrible. I was alone. The one person who should have believed me, protected me, chosen me, she'd chosen him instead. She'd chosen her marriage, her family unit, her comfort over my safety. I couldn't entirely blame her. Derek was the father of her child, her partner, her future. I was just her mother. We're taught from childhood that mothers are permanent, unconditional, unbreakable. We'll always be there. So when there's a choice to be made, when someone has to be sacrificed to keep the peace, it's always the mother. Because mothers understand. Mothers forgive. Mothers absorb the damage so everyone else can stay intact. Over the next few weeks, things got worse. Derek became bolder, knowing that Amy either didn't believe me or wouldn't act on it if she did. The comments became more frequent, more vicious. He'd bump into me in the hallway and not apologize. He'd eat food I'd specifically bought for myself and claim he didn't know. He'd turn up the thermostat until my room was stifling, then act confused when I complained about the heat. It was psychological warfare, designed to make me feel crazy, unwanted, desperate. Check the description box below if you've ever felt invisible in your own life. If you've ever tried to speak up only to be told you're overreacting, being too sensitive, imagining things. There are more stories there from people like me. People who were gaslit and isolated until they almost believed the lies themselves. One evening in early August, I was carrying a laundry basket down the stairs when Derek appeared at the bottom. I didn't see him until the last second. He didn't move. Didn't step aside. I had to stop abruptly to avoid running into him, and the sudden movement made me lose my balance. I grabbed the railing, the laundry basket tumbling down the stairs, clean clothes scattering everywhere. "You should be more careful, Eleanor," Derek said, looking down at the mess. "At your age, a fall could be serious." He stepped over the clothes and walked away. I sat down on the stairs, my heart pounding, and realized that he'd done it on purpose. He'd wanted me to fall. Maybe not enough to seriously hurt me, but enough to scare me. Enough to remind me how vulnerable I was. That night, I started planning. I'm not proud of what I thought about in the dark hours of that night. I'm not proud of the rage that consumed me, the bitter fantasies of revenge that played out in my mind. But I'm not ashamed either. Because sometimes rage is the only appropriate response to injustice. Sometimes anger is the only thing that keeps you from disappearing entirely. I thought about leaving. Packing up my things and finding an apartment somewhere, starting over. But I'd given up my house, sold my furniture. I lived on Thomas's life insurance and Social Security, barely $1,500 a month. Have you tried to rent an apartment on $1,500 a month? In this economy, it's impossible. And why should I be the one to leave? Why should I be driven from my daughter's life, from my granddaughter's life, because Derek Patterson was a bully and an abuser? No, I wasn't leaving. So I started watching him. Really watching him. Learning his routines, his habits, his weaknesses. Derek was a creature of habit, I discovered. He woke up every morning at 6:15, showered for exactly 12 minutes, came downstairs at 6:45 for breakfast. He liked his eggs scrambled with cheese, his toast lightly buttered, his coffee black. But his favorite was tea. English breakfast tea with 1 sugar and a splash of milk. He'd drink it while reading the news on his tablet, sitting at the kitchen table in his suit and tie, already in work mode. Every morning. 6:45. 1 cup of tea. I started making it for him. It began as a peace offering, or at least that's what I told myself. I'm up anyway, I'd say. Might as well make myself useful. Amy seemed pleased. Derek seemed suspicious at first, but after a week of perfectly prepared tea with nothing sinister about it, he relaxed. Started expecting it. That's the thing about habits. They make you predictable. They make you vulnerable. I spent weeks researching. The library computers don't track what you search for. Did you know that? It's all anonymous. I learned about poisons, about their effects, about what could kill and what could merely incapacitate. I learned about detection, about what showed up in autopsies and what didn't. I learned about symptoms and timelines and therapeutic doses versus lethal doses. I wasn't planning to kill him. Not really. Not at first. I just wanted to make him feel a fraction of what he'd made me feel. Powerless. Afraid. Small. But as the weeks went on and the abuse continued, and make no mistake, it was abuse, even without more bruises, I started to think bigger. Darker. I started to think about what the world would be like without Derek Patterson in it. How much lighter Amy would feel, even if she didn't realize it yet. How much safer I would be. How much better Olivia's life could be without a father who would eventually turn his cruelty on her too. Because men like Derek don't stop. They escalate. If he was willing to grab an old woman in a dark hallway, what would he do to Amy when she finally stood up to him? What would he do to Olivia when she was old enough to talk back, to disobey, to inconvenience him? I had to stop him. 3 weeks after I started planning, I bought rat poison from a hardware store 2 towns over. Brodifacoum-based, highly effective, undetectable in food or drink until it was far too late. The clerk barely looked at me, just another old lady with a mouse problem. I took it home, hid it in a locked box in the back of my closet, and told myself I was just being prepared. Just in case. Just as a last resort. But I knew. Somewhere deep down, I knew. I was going to poison my son-in-law. I was going to slip that powder into his morning tea, watch him drink it, and wait. The rat poison sat in the back of my closet for 6 days before I touched it again. 6 days of going through the motions, making breakfast, caring for Olivia while Amy worked from home, smiling at Derek across the dinner table while my heart hammered against my ribs. 6 days of reaching into that closet for clothes, seeing the locked box, and turning away. I'm not a murderer, I'd tell myself. I'm not that person. But what person was I? I was a woman whose daughter didn't believe her. A woman whose own home had become a prison. A woman who flinched every time she heard footsteps in the hallway, who had started sleeping with her door locked, who had panic attacks in the shower where no one could hear her cry. I was a woman who'd been disappeared while still breathing. During those 6 days, Derek's cruelty reached new heights, as if he sensed my desperation and wanted to push me over the edge. On Tuesday, he accidentally deleted all my phone contacts. On Wednesday, he told Amy that I'd been giving Olivia too many snacks and that's why she wasn't eating her dinner, a complete fabrication, but Amy believed him. On Thursday, he locked me out of the house for 3 hours while Amy was at work, claiming he'd been in a conference call and hadn't heard me knocking. I'd stood on the porch in 90-degree heat, no phone, no keys, no water, while he sat inside in the air conditioning. When Amy got home and found me sitting on the steps red-faced and dizzy, Derek acted shocked. "Eleanor, why didn't you knock harder? I told you I had an important call. You should have gone to a neighbor's house." I did knock harder, I'd said, but my voice came out weak, defeated. Amy gave me a look that said, "Mom, please don't make this difficult." That night, I unlocked the box in my closet and really looked at the rat poison for the first time since buying it. The container was small, innocuous. The powder inside looked like flour or powdered sugar. The label warned about dangers to children and pets. It said nothing about vengeful grandmothers. The active ingredient, brodifacoum, was an anticoagulant. It prevented blood from clotting. A person who ingested it wouldn't die immediately. They'd go on with their day, feeling normal, while inside their body, tiny hemorrhages began. Minor at first. Then worse. Then catastrophic. It could take days. Maybe a week. And by the time symptoms appeared, it would be too late to stop. I held the container in my hands and thought about Thomas. What would he say if he could see me now? Thomas, who'd been gentle and kind, who'd never raised his voice to me in 38 years of marriage. Thomas, who'd taught Amy to stand up for herself, to be strong, to never let anyone make her feel less than she was worth. Maybe if Thomas were here, I wouldn't be in this position. Maybe Derek would never have dared to treat me this way with my husband alive to protect me. Or maybe Derek had always been this person, just waiting for the right circumstances to show his true nature. I put the container back in the box, locked it, and went to bed without deciding anything. The next morning was Friday. Amy had an early doctor's appointment, just a checkup, nothing serious, and she asked if I could watch Olivia. Of course I said yes. I loved those mornings alone with my granddaughter, the two of us in our own little bubble where Derek's presence didn't intrude. I fed Olivia her breakfast, mashed bananas and oatmeal, while she babbled and waved her tiny fists. She had Amy's eyes, brown and bright and full of wonder. She had Derek's nose, unfortunately, but maybe she'd grow into it. She had my hair, Thomas's hair, dark and thick with a stubborn cowlick at the crown. She had her whole life ahead of her. "Your grandma loves you so much," I whispered, wiping banana from her chin. "You know that, don't you? No matter what happens, you remember that Grandma Eleanor loved you more than anything." Olivia gurgled and grabbed my finger, holding on with that fierce grip babies have, and I felt my eyes fill with tears. What was I doing? What was I planning? But then I heard Derek upstairs, his footsteps heavy on the floor above us, and I remembered. I remembered his hands on my arm. His breath in my face. His words designed to cut and diminish and destroy. I remembered that men like him don't stop. They escalate. And I thought about Olivia growing up with Derek as her father. Learning from him. Absorbing his casual cruelty, his need to dominate, his conviction that some people matter more than others. Would she become like him? Or would she become like Amy, a woman who'd learned to look away, to make excuses, to sacrifice her own mother to keep the peace? Neither option was acceptable. Amy came home around 11, cheerful and relieved that everything had checked out fine at the doctor. We had lunch together, tuna sandwiches and tomato soup, and she talked about maybe taking Olivia to the park if the weather held. Normal conversation. Normal day. Derek came home at his usual time, 6:15. He didn't acknowledge me beyond a curt nod. We ate dinner, pasta primavera that I'd spent 2 hours making, and Derek complained that it was too bland. Amy defended me, said it tasted fine, and Derek gave her a look that made her go quiet and focus on her plate. After dinner, I excused myself to my room. I sat on my bed and listened to the sounds of the house settling in for the night. Amy giving Olivia a bath, the baby's delighted squeals. Derek watching something on TV, the low murmur of voices and canned laughter. Normal sounds. A normal family evening. Except nothing about this was normal. I got up, went to my closet, and retrieved the locked box. My hands were steady as I opened it. Steady as I measured out a dose that would be sufficient but not immediately obvious. Just enough to start the process. Just enough to set things in motion. I poured it into a small vial, the kind that used to hold vanilla extract, and put the container back in its box, locked it away. I slipped the vial into my cardigan pocket. It felt like carrying a loaded gun. Heavy with possibility. Heavy with consequence. That night, I barely slept. I lay in bed going over the plan again and again. Derek would come down at 6:45, like always. I'd make his tea, like always. I'd put the powder in, it would dissolve completely, leave no trace, and I'd serve it to him with a smile. He'd drink it while reading his news, like always. And then I'd wait. The thing about planning something terrible is that you have to imagine every detail, every outcome, every possibility. You have to game it out in your mind until you've considered every angle. And the more you think about it, the more real it becomes. The line between thinking and doing gets thinner and thinner until you can't quite remember which side you're on anymore. If you've ever stood at a crossroads in your life, a moment where you knew that whatever you decided would change everything, you know what that feels like. That sick, dizzy sensation of free fall. That terror and exhilaration mixed together until you can't tell them apart. Subscribe if you want to know what happened next. Because what I'm about to tell you, the moment I finally acted, it changed everything. Not just for Derek. For all of us. The weekend passed in a blur of normalcy that felt obscene given what I was planning. On Saturday, we went to the farmer's market as a family. Amy pushed Olivia in her stroller while Derek walked ahead, talking on his phone about work. I trailed behind, carrying the reusable shopping bags, invisible as always. We bought fresh corn and tomatoes, a loaf of sourdough bread, lavender honey from the local beekeeper. A woman at the vegetable stand recognized me from church. "Eleanor. Haven't seen you in a while. How are you doing?" "Fine," I said automatically. "Just fine." She looked at me closely, and I wondered what she saw. Could she tell? Could she see the poison in my pocket and the murder in my heart? But she just smiled and said, "Well, you take care now. Tell Amy I said hello." "I will." That night, Derek and Amy went to dinner at his boss's house, some kind of networking event that Amy had been dreading all week. I stayed home with Olivia, grateful for the reprieve. We played peekaboo and read picture books until she fell asleep in my arms, her head heavy against my chest, her breath warm and sweet. I sat there in the darkened nursery, rocking her gently, and let myself imagine a future where she grew up without Derek's shadow over her life. A future where Amy was free, even if she didn't know she'd been trapped. A future where I could be a grandmother without fear. Sunday was church. I hadn't been in weeks, couldn't stand the hypocrisy of sitting in those pews planning what I was planning. But Amy asked me to come and I couldn't say no without raising suspicion. So I sat between Amy and an elderly woman named Dorothy Kimball who smelled like mothballs and peppermint, and I listened to Pastor Richards talk about forgiveness. "The Lord calls us to forgive those who trespass against us," he said, his voice echoing in the vaulted space. "Not because they deserve it, but because holding on to anger poisons our own souls." I almost laughed. Poison. If he only knew. But his words burrowed into me anyway, unwelcome and persistent. Was I poisoning my own soul? Was revenge worth damnation? Then I looked down the pew at Derek, sitting with his arm around Amy, looking every inch the devoted husband and father. And I thought, some people deserve to be poisoned. Some people are poison themselves, infecting everyone they touch. The world would be better without him in it. That night, lying in bed, I made my final decision. Tomorrow. Monday morning. No more waiting, no more second guessing. I would do it, and I would live with whatever consequences came after. But I needed to be smart. I needed to be prepared. I got up and went to my computer, a laptop that Amy had given me last Christmas, insisting I needed to stay connected to the modern world. I opened a private browsing window and searched for symptoms of anticoagulant poisoning. I needed to know what to expect, how Derek would present, what the doctors would look for. The results were clinical, detached. Initial symptoms might include fatigue, weakness, pale skin. Then bleeding, nosebleeds, blood in urine or stool, excessive bruising. Finally, if untreated, internal hemorrhaging. Bleeding in the brain, the lungs, the digestive system. It would look like a spontaneous medical event. A bleeding disorder. Maybe genetic, maybe environmental. Tragic, but natural. Unless someone thought to test for rat poison specifically. Unless someone suspected foul play. I cleared my browsing history, shut down the computer, and went back to bed. Sleep didn't come until nearly dawn, and when it did, it was filled with dreams of blood and courtrooms and Olivia crying for a grandmother she could no longer see. I woke to my alarm at 6 a.m. Monday morning. The house was still quiet, everyone else still sleeping. I got up, showered, dressed in a blue cardigan and grey slacks, my armor of normalcy. I braided my hair and pinned it up the way I'd worn it for 40 years. I looked at myself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. She looked old. Tired. Determined. She looked like someone who'd been pushed past her breaking point. I went downstairs to the kitchen. The morning light was just beginning to filter through the yellow curtains, turning everything soft and golden. The coffee maker sat ready to go, just needing to be switched on. The kettle sat on the stove, waiting for water. I filled the kettle and set it to boil. I got out Derek's favorite mug, a grey one with "World's Best Lawyer" printed on it in black letters. Amy had given it to him as a joke, but he used it every day. The irony wasn't lost on me. I got out the English breakfast tea, the sugar bowl, the small pitcher of milk. And then I reached into my cardigan pocket and pulled out the vial. My hands weren't shaking. I'd thought they would be, but they were steady. Calm. This was the right thing to do. The necessary thing. The only thing that would free us all from Derek's toxic presence. I unscrewed the cap and poured the powder into the empty mug. It settled at the bottom, nearly invisible. I put the vial back in my pocket. The kettle began to whistle. I poured the boiling water over the tea bag in Derek's mug, watched the water turn amber, watched the powder dissolve completely. I added 1 teaspoon of sugar and a splash of milk, just the way he liked it. I stirred it slowly, methodically. Normal. It looked completely normal. I heard footsteps above me. Derek, right on schedule. 6:45. He'd be down in a moment. I carried the mug to the kitchen table and set it at his usual spot. Then I busied myself at the counter, making coffee for myself, trying to look casual. Natural. Derek came in wearing his navy suit and a red tie. His hair was still damp from the shower. He didn't look at me, just sat down at the table and reached for his mug. "Morning," he muttered, already focused on his tablet. "Good morning," I said. My voice sounded normal. Amazing how normal it sounded. He lifted the mug to his lips. This was it. The point of no return. Once he drank it, once that poison entered his system, there was no taking it back. No undoing it. No explaining it away as a terrible thought that I'd never actually act on. He took a sip. Then another. I turned back to the coffee maker so he wouldn't see my face. "Eleanor," he said, and my heart stopped. Did he taste something? Did he know? Yes. I didn't turn around. "This tea is perfect. Thanks." I gripped the counter. "You're welcome." He went back to his tablet, drinking his poison tea, utterly oblivious to what I'd just done. What he'd driven me to do. I poured myself coffee and sat at the other end of the table, cradling the mug in both hands. We sat in silence for 10 minutes while Derek finished his tea and scrolled through his news. Normal. Just another Monday morning. Amy came down with Olivia at 7:15, breaking the spell. "Good morning. Did everyone sleep well?" "Fine," Derek said, standing up and kissing her cheek. He tickled Olivia under the chin, making her giggle. The loving father. The devoted husband. The monster who'd been poisoned and didn't even know it yet. "I've got to run," he said, grabbing his briefcase. "Big meeting this morning. I'll probably be late tonight." "Okay, honey. Good luck." He left without saying goodbye to me. The front door closed. His car started. He drove away, the poison already working its way through his system, silent and invisible and irreversible. I sat at the kitchen table with Amy and Olivia, smiling and nodding as my daughter talked about her day ahead. Inside, I was screaming. What had I done? What had I done? The first day was the hardest. Not because of guilt, though that came later, in waves that knocked me sideways when I least expected it. No, the first day was hard because nothing happened. Derek went to work. He came home. He ate dinner. He played with Olivia. He watched TV. He went to bed. Normal. Everything was disgustingly, terrifyingly normal. I'd read that it could take 48 to 72 hours for symptoms to appear, but knowing that intellectually and living through it were two different things. Every time Derek walked into a room, I braced myself. Every time he cleared his throat or rubbed his eyes, I thought, this is it. This is when it starts. But it didn't start. Monday night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. Had I not used enough powder? Was the dose too small to be effective? Or worse, had I somehow messed it up entirely? Maybe the heat of the tea had neutralized it. Maybe it had clumped at the bottom of the mug and he hadn't actually ingested it. Maybe I'd poisoned him wrong. The absurdity of that thought, the sick humor of it, made me laugh out loud, a sharp bark of sound in the darkness that scared even me. I clamped my hand over my mouth, afraid someone would hear, would come investigate, would somehow look at me and know what I'd done. But no one came. The house stayed quiet. Tuesday morning, I made Derek's tea again. Just tea this time, no poison. I couldn't risk doing it twice. Too much and he'd die too quickly, too obviously. Questions would be asked. Autopsies would be done. But I needed to maintain the routine, needed to act like everything was normal. Derek drank his tea, same as always. He didn't thank me this time. At breakfast, Amy mentioned that Derek seemed tired. You were restless last night, she said to him. Did you sleep okay? My heart jumped. Was this it? The first symptom? I'm fine, Derek said, but he did look pale. Or was I imagining it? Was I seeing what I wanted to see? He went to work. He came home. Another normal day. By Wednesday, I was starting to panic. What if it didn't work? What if I'd gone through with this terrible thing, crossed this uncrossable line, and it didn't even accomplish what I'd intended? What if Derek just went on living, hurting me, and now I had to carry the knowledge of what I tried to do without even the cold comfort of success? But Wednesday night, things changed. Derek came home from work looking genuinely unwell. His skin had a greyish tinge to it, and there were dark circles under his eyes. When Amy asked if he felt okay, he snapped at her, said he was fine, just tired, and could everyone stop hovering? At dinner, I watched him push food around his plate. He barely ate anything. Said he wasn't hungry, his stomach was off. Maybe you're coming down with something, Amy said, concerned. There's a flu going around Derek's office, she told me. 3 people have called in sick this week. Maybe, Derek said. But he looked at his food with something like revulsion, and I knew. This wasn't the flu. This was the poison starting to work. That night, I heard him get up several times. Heard the bathroom door close, the toilet flush. Heard Amy's concerned murmurs and Derek's irritated responses telling her to go back to sleep. I lay in my bed with my heart pounding, thinking, it's working. It's really working. And I felt, what? Relief? Satisfaction? Horror? All of it. Everything at once. A terrible cocktail of emotions that made me feel sick myself. Thursday morning, Derek didn't come down for breakfast. I made his tea anyway, just regular tea, and stood in the kitchen with the mug in my hands, unsure what to do. Upstairs, I could hear Amy talking to him, her voice worried. Derek, you really don't look good. Maybe you should stay home today. Call in sick. I have meetings. Important meetings. I can't just, he cut off, and I heard him rush to the bathroom. Amy came downstairs a few minutes later, Olivia on her hip. Mom, Derek's really sick. I think he needs to see a doctor, but he insists he's fine and just needs to get to work. She looked scared. Young. Like my little girl again, out of her depth and needing her mother. I wanted to hug her. I wanted to confess. I wanted to say, don't worry, honey. He's dying and soon we'll both be free. Instead, I said, men are stubborn about doctors. He'll probably feel better once he gets some food in him. He can't keep anything down. He was sick twice already this morning. Nausea. Vomiting. Signs of internal bleeding beginning. The poison was working faster than I'd expected. Maybe it's food poisoning. I suggested. Did he eat anything unusual yesterday? Amy shook her head. No, we all ate the same things. If it was food poisoning, we'd all be sick. True. Good point. I hadn't thought of that. Derek came downstairs 20 minutes later, dressed for work but looking like death. His skin was pale and clammy, his eyes bloodshot. But he was determined to go to the office, kept insisting he had important meetings that couldn't be rescheduled. I'll be fine, he said, waving away Amy's concerns. It's just a stomach bug. I'll push through. Watching him walk out to his car, unsteady on his feet, I felt a surge of something that might have been pity. Might have been guilt. Might have been satisfaction. Check the description box below if you want to hear more stories about justice. Cold, hard, irreversible justice. About what happens when the system fails you and you have to become your own protector. Your own avenger. That afternoon, Amy got a call from Derek's secretary. He'd collapsed in the office bathroom. They'd called an ambulance. He was being taken to Cedar Falls General Hospital. Amy was frantic. Mom, can you watch Olivia? I need to get to the hospital. Of course, honey. Go. Let me know what the doctors say. She grabbed her purse and keys and rushed out, leaving me alone with my granddaughter and my guilt. I should have felt triumphant. My plan was working. Derek was in the hospital, probably being poked and prodded by doctors who would find, what? Internal bleeding? Unexplained hemorrhaging? Would they figure it out? Would they test for anticoagulants? Instead, I felt numb. I went through the motions of caring for Olivia, feeding her lunch, putting her down for a nap, while my mind spun in circles. What had I done? What had I really, truly done? I'd poisoned a man. I'd potentially killed someone. Me, Eleanor Whitmore, who cried at Hallmark commercials and couldn't even kill a spider without feeling guilty. I'd researched and planned and executed, terrible word, that, an actual poisoning. I was a criminal. A murderer, or attempted murderer at least. And I couldn't even claim I'd acted in self-defense, not legally. Derek hadn't been actively threatening my life. He'd been emotionally abusing me. Yes. Making my life hell. Yes. But would a court see that as justification for what I'd done? No. Of course not. I'd go to prison. I'd spend the rest of my life in prison, and I'd never see Olivia grow up, never hold her at her high school graduation or her wedding. Amy would hate me. Everyone would hate me. But at least they'd be safe. At least Derek wouldn't hurt them anymore. Amy called at 4:30. Her voice was tight with stress. The doctors don't know what's wrong. They're running tests. His blood isn't clotting properly, he's bleeding internally, and they can't figure out why. They're talking about a transfusion, about moving him to a specialist in Des Moines. That sounds serious, I said, and my voice sounded so calm, so measured. Inside, I was screaming. Mom, I'm scared. What if it's something genetic? Something terrible? What if? She couldn't finish the sentence, but I heard it anyway. What if he dies? The doctors are doing everything they can, I said. Try not to worry. I'm sure they'll figure it out. But I knew they wouldn't. Not unless they specifically tested for Brodifacoum, and why would they? A young, healthy man coming in with a bleeding disorder. They'd look at hemophilia, leukemia, liver disease. 1,000 different causes before they'd think of rat poison. Amy stayed at the hospital all night. I stayed home with Olivia, rocking her to sleep while singing the same lullabies I'd sung to Amy when she was a baby. The same lullabies my mother had sung to me. 3 generations of women. And I was the one who'd broken the chain, who'd stepped outside the bounds of decency and morality and done something unforgivable. But necessary. I had to keep reminding myself of that. Necessary. Friday morning, Derek was worse. The bleeding was getting harder to control. The doctors were baffled. They'd ruled out hemophilia and weren't finding any genetic markers for clotting disorders. They were starting to talk about toxic exposure. Maybe something environmental, something at his workplace? I felt a flutter of fear. They were getting closer to the truth, even if they didn't know it yet. Amy came home briefly to shower and change clothes, her face drawn and exhausted. They're transferring him to University of Iowa hospitals in Iowa City, she said. They have better specialists there, better equipment. Mom, this is really serious. The doctors are using words like critical and unstable. I'm so sorry, honey. And I was. Not sorry that Derek was suffering, he deserved to suffer, but sorry that Amy was in pain. Sorry that my daughter was watching her husband deteriorate and feeling helpless. This was the part one hadn't fully considered when planning my revenge. The collateral damage. Amy's grief. Olivia potentially growing up without a father. The ripple effects of my actions extending far beyond just Derek and me. But I'd gone too far to turn back now. Even if I wanted to confess, even if I wanted to tell the doctors what I'd done so they could treat him appropriately, it was probably too late. The damage was done. The bleeding had started. At best, Derek would survive with permanent injuries. At worst, I was a widowmaker about to add daughter destroyer to my list of crimes. Friday afternoon, Amy left for Iowa City to be with Derek at the new hospital. I stayed home with Olivia, keeping her routine normal even as my world was imploding. We went to the park. We made cookies. We read books. I held her close and breathed in the baby smell of her, powder and milk and innocence, and I let myself cry when she wasn't looking. That night, alone in the house except for a sleeping baby, I finally let myself break down. I sat on the kitchen floor, the same floor where I'd stood Monday morning pouring poison into a tea mug, and I sobbed. Great, heaving sobs that came from somewhere deep and primal and terrified. What had I done? What kind of person had I become? But even through the tears, even through the guilt and fear and horror, a small, hard voice in the back of my mind whispered, "You did what you had to do. You protected yourself the only way you could." And maybe that was true. Maybe in some cosmic sense, this was justified. An eye for an eye. Justice for the powerless. Or maybe I was just a murderer trying to justify the unjustifiable. Saturday morning, I got the call I'd been dreading and hoping for in equal measure. Derek was dead. He'd hemorrhaged in his brain overnight. Massive stroke. The doctors had done everything they could, but there was too much damage. He died at 4:23 a.m., with Amy holding his hand. My daughter's husband was dead. My granddaughter's father was dead. And I had killed him. Amy came home Sunday afternoon, her eyes red-rimmed and hollow. She moved through the house like a ghost, picking up Olivia and holding her so tightly the baby squirmed and fussed. I stood in the doorway of the living room, watching this tableau of grief, and felt my own heart crack open. "I'm so sorry, sweetheart," I said, the words pitifully inadequate. Amy just nodded. She couldn't speak. What could she say? What could any of us say? Derek's parents arrived Monday morning. I'd met them only twice before, once at the wedding and once when Olivia was born. Patricia and Robert Patterson, elegant and cold, from somewhere in Connecticut where old money still meant something. They swept into the house like an icy wind, bringing with them an air of judgment and barely concealed disdain. Patricia embraced Amy stiffly. "We came as soon as we heard. Our poor boy. Our poor boy." Robert stood in the foyer, looking around the house as if cataloguing its worth. His eyes landed on me, and something in his expression made my blood run cold. "Mrs. Whitmore," he said. No warmth. Just acknowledgement. "Mr. Patterson. Mrs. Patterson. I'm so very sorry for your loss." "Yes," Patricia said, her voice tight. "The doctors said it was some kind of toxic exposure. They're investigating possible environmental causes. Something Derek came into contact with." My heart stuttered. "Investigating?" "Of course," Robert said. "When a healthy 35-year-old man dies suddenly of organ failure and internal hemorrhaging, questions get asked. The hospital is doing a full toxicology screen. They've already contacted Derek's office to test for environmental hazards." I forced myself to remain calm. "That makes sense. You want to know what happened." "We want to know exactly what happened," Patricia said, and her eyes met mine. Did she suspect? Could she possibly know? Amy was oblivious to the undercurrent of tension. She was drowning in her own grief, barely able to function. She'd retreated into herself, moving mechanically through the necessary tasks of death, calling Derek's office, contacting the funeral home, making arrangements. I tried to help, but Patricia and Robert had taken over, pushing me to the margins. Which was fine. Better. Even. The less involved I was, the less suspicious it would look. If anyone suspected anything at all. Tuesday, 2 detectives came to the house. I answered the door because Amy was upstairs trying to get Olivia down for a nap. The 2 men on the porch showed me their badges, Detective Michael Chen and Detective Lisa Ramirez from the Cedar Falls Police Department. Wait. No. Not Chen. I had to avoid that name. Let me start over. Detective Michael Harper and Detective Lisa Ramirez. We're very sorry for your loss, Harper said. He was young, maybe early 40s, with kind eyes that I didn't trust for a second. We have a few questions about Derek Patterson's death. May we come in? Of course. I stepped aside, my heart hammering. Stay calm. You've done nothing wrong. You're just a grieving mother-in-law. They sat in the living room. I offered them coffee, which they declined. Professional. All business. Mrs. Whitmore, we understand you lived here with Derek and Amy. Ramirez was older, harder. Her eyes missed nothing. Yes, for the past 18 months. And how would you describe your relationship with your son-in-law? The question was casual, but loaded. How much did they know? Had someone said something? Fine, I said. Normal. He was my daughter's husband. We got along well enough. Well enough. Harper jumped on that. That's an interesting phrasing. I shrugged, trying to look unconcerned. We didn't have a deep personal relationship. He was busy with work, I was busy helping with the baby. We were cordial. Did Derek have any enemies that you knew of? Anyone who might have wished him harm? My mouth went dry. No, not that I know of. He was a lawyer. I suppose people in that profession make enemies, but he never mentioned anyone specific. What about here at home? Any conflicts? Arguments? No more than any normal household. Derek worked long hours. Sometimes he was stressed. But nothing serious. They asked more questions. About Derek's health, his habits, his routine. Who prepared his meals? Who had access to his food and drinks? That last question made my palms sweat. We all did, I said. It's a family home. Everyone has access to the kitchen. Did Derek have any known allergies? Any medications he was taking? Not that I know of. You'd have to ask Amy. They did ask Amy, when she came downstairs. I listened from the kitchen, pretending to clean but really straining to hear every word. Amy told them the same things. Derek was healthy, no medications, no allergies. Yes, he'd been stressed at work lately. No, he hadn't mentioned feeling unwell before the sudden onset of symptoms. The toxicology report should be back in a few days, Harper said before they left. If there was any environmental exposure or toxic substance, we'll find it. After they left, I went to my room and sat on the bed, shaking. They were going to find the brodifacoum. They were going to know Derek was poisoned. And then they'd start looking at who had the opportunity, who had the motive. They'd look at me. I should have been more careful. I should have thought this through better. But it was too late now. All I could do was wait and hope that somehow, impossibly, I'd gotten away with it. The funeral was Thursday. A massive affair at St. Michael's Church, packed with Derek's colleagues and friends, people I'd never met who came to mourn a man they thought they knew. Patricia had taken over all the arrangements, choosing readings and hymns and flowers. Amy was relegated to the front pew, holding Olivia, too numb to protest. I sat next to her, my hand on her knee, offering what comfort I could. The irony wasn't lost on me, comforting my daughter for a death I'd caused. Pastor Richards gave the eulogy. He talked about Derek's dedication to his work, his love for his family, his bright future cut tragically short. He made Derek sound like a saint. No one mentioned the cruelty, the control, the quiet abuse that had happened behind closed doors. No one ever does, do they? Death whitewashes everything. Turns monsters into martyrs. During the service, I felt eyes on me. I looked around and caught Robert Patterson staring at me with an expression I couldn't read. When our eyes met, he didn't look away. Just kept staring, like he was trying to see through me, trying to decode the truth written on my face. I looked away first. At the cemetery, as Derek's casket was lowered into the ground, I thought about Thomas. My Thomas, buried just 3 rows over. What would he think of me now? Would he understand? Would he forgive me? Or would he be horrified by what I'd become? Amy broke down completely at the graveside, sobbing into my shoulder while Olivia cried in confusion. I held them both, whispering meaningless comforts, while inside I felt nothing. Emptiness. A vast, echoing void where emotion should have been. Maybe I was in shock. Maybe this was my mind's way of protecting itself from the enormity of what I'd done. Or maybe I really was a monster. After the burial, there was a reception at Patricia and Robert's hotel. The nice one on the edge of town with the conference rooms and the catering service. More people I didn't know, offering condolences I didn't deserve. I stayed close to Amy, playing the devoted mother, the supportive presence. Robert pulled me aside at one point. "Eleanor, may I speak with you privately?" We went out to the hotel patio, empty in the October cold. Robert stood with his back to the building, effectively blocking my exit. Trapping me. "I want to be direct with you," he said. "I don't believe my son's death was natural." My heart stopped. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that Derek was healthy, young, strong. He didn't just suddenly develop a bleeding disorder out of nowhere. Something caused this. Someone caused this." "The doctors said." "I don't care what the doctors said. I know my son. And I know he had concerns about living in this house." "Concerns?" "He told me, about a month ago, that you made him uncomfortable. That you were intrusive. That you had boundary issues." Robert's eyes were cold. "He said you resented him for taking Amy away from you. That you'd never accepted him as part of the family." Lies. All lies. Derek had been building a narrative, I realized. He'd been laying groundwork, telling his parents things that would cast me in a negative light. Maybe he'd sensed that eventually, I'd speak up. That I'd tell Amy the full truth of how he treated me. So he'd preemptively discredited me. It was brilliant, in a sick way. Even from the grave, Derek was abusing me. "That's not true," I said quietly. "I welcomed Derek into our family." "Really? Because from what my son said, you made his life hell. You were constantly criticizing him, judging him, trying to turn Amy against him. You were jealous of their marriage." "Mr. Patterson, I understand you're grieving. We all are. But whatever Derek told you was the truth. And I intend to make sure the police know about it. About the tension in this house. About the fact that you had motive to want my son gone." He walked away, leaving me standing on the patio, cold and shaking. He knew. He didn't have proof, but he knew. Or at least he suspected enough to point the police in my direction. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed replaying every interaction with Derek, every conversation with the police, every moment that might have given me away. I thought about prison, what it would be like to spend my final years locked in a cell. Would Amy visit me? Would she bring Olivia? Or would I be dead to them, erased from their lives like I'd erased Derek from his? Friday morning, Detective Ramirez came back. Alone this time. "Mrs. Whitmore, we got the toxicology results." This was it. This was when everything ended. And Derek Patterson's death was caused by brodifacoum poisoning. It's a substance found in rat poison. He ingested a lethal dose sometime in the days before his death. The world tilted. I gripped the edge of the kitchen counter, trying to stay upright. Rat poison? How would he? "That's what we're trying to determine. Do you use rat poison in this house?" "No. Never. I hate those things. Too dangerous with a baby in the house." "Has Amy ever used it? That you know of?" "Not that I've seen. Have you asked her?" "I will. Mrs. Whitmore, I need to be honest with you. This is now a homicide investigation. Someone poisoned Derek Patterson. Deliberately. And we're going to find out who." She left me with that threat hanging in the air. A homicide investigation. I was the subject of a homicide investigation. I should have confessed right then. Should have told the truth, taken responsibility, thrown myself on the mercy of the court. But I didn't. Because I'm a coward. Because I wanted to see Olivia grow up. Because I didn't want to die in prison. Because some part of me still believed I'd done the right thing, even if the law disagreed. Over the next week, the police interviewed everyone. Amy, devastated and confused. Patricia and Robert, who made sure to mention all the concerns Derek had shared with them. Derek's colleagues at the law firm. His friends. The neighbors. And me. They interviewed me 3 more times, each session lasting hours. Each time, I stuck to my story. I didn't know anything about rat poison. I had no reason to want Derek dead. Our relationship was cordial if not close. They searched the house with Amy's permission. Went through every room, every closet, every drawer. I held my breath when they got to my room, my closet, but the locked box with the rat poison container was gone. I'd disposed of it the day after Derek died, throwing it into a dumpster behind a gas station 2 towns over. They found nothing. But the investigation continued. Harper and Ramirez were nothing if not thorough. They obtained Derek's phone records, his computer files, his emails. They interviewed his family physician, his dentist, his dry cleaner. They built a timeline of his final days, accounting for every meal, every drink, every moment. And they kept coming back to the house. To the kitchen. To the fact that Derek had tea every morning, made by me. "Walk me through it again," Ramirez said during our 4th interview. Derek's morning routine. He came down at 6:45. I made his tea, English breakfast with 1 sugar and milk. He drank it while reading his tablet. Then he'd leave for work around 7:15. "And you made this tea every morning?" "Most mornings, yes." "Why?" "Because I was already in the kitchen. It was a small kindness." "Or a convenient opportunity," Ramirez said quietly. "Excuse me. Mrs. Whitmore, we've talked to several people who've told us that your relationship with Derek wasn't as cordial as you've claimed. That there was tension. That Derek felt uncomfortable around you. People say a lot of things after someone dies. Do you deny that Derek criticized you? Made comments about your living situation?" I hesitated. Lying would be stupid. They clearly already had information. But admitting the truth felt like a confession. Derek could be critical sometimes. But that's normal in families. "We also have information suggesting that Derek physically restrained you on at least 1 occasion. That he grabbed your arm hard enough to leave bruises." My breath caught. How did they know? Had Amy mentioned it? Had I mentioned it to someone I'd forgotten about? "That was a misunderstanding," I said carefully. "A misunderstanding that left finger-shaped bruises on your arm. He didn't mean to hurt me. But he did hurt you. And shortly after that incident, he ended up poisoned. You can see how that looks, Mrs. Whitmore. I didn't poison him. I wouldn't. Even though he was hurting you? Even though he made you feel unwelcome in your own daughter's home? Even though removing him would solve all your problems?" "Detective, I'm 63 years old. I volunteer at the library. I go to church. I bake cookies for my granddaughter. I'm not a murderer." "No one thinks they're a murderer," Ramirez said. "Until they are." The investigation dragged on for weeks. October turned to November, the leaves falling from the trees and leaving everything bare and exposed. That's how I felt, stripped of protection, vulnerable to every cold wind. Amy was lost in her grief, barely functional. She'd taken a leave of absence from work and spent most days in her bedroom, emerging only to care for Olivia. I took over most of the household duties, grateful for the distraction. Cooking, cleaning, laundry, anything to keep my hands busy and my mind occupied. But I couldn't escape the investigation. It followed me everywhere, a shadow I couldn't shake. The police had interviewed our neighbors. Mrs. Henderson from next door told them she'd heard raised voices from our house on several occasions. Mr. Cho across the street said he'd noticed tension whenever he saw Derek and me together. Little observations, innocent on their own, but together they painted a picture of a household with serious problems. A household with motive for murder. Detective Harper came by again on a Tuesday afternoon. Amy was upstairs with Olivia, and I was folding laundry in the living room when the doorbell rang. "Mrs. Whitmore, do you have a moment?" I let him in, my stomach churning. Of course. We sat in the living room, the pile of tiny baby clothes between us like a barrier. Harper's eyes were kind, but there was steel underneath. This man would not give up until he found the truth. "I wanted to talk to you about something we discovered in Derek's computer files," he said. "There were several documents, notes, really, where he recorded incidents involving you." My blood turned to ice. What kind of incidents? Times when he felt you'd overstepped boundaries. Times when he felt threatened by your presence in the house. He was quite detailed. He even mentioned considering asking Amy to have you move out. Derek never said anything like that to me. Maybe he didn't feel safe saying it to your face. Mrs. Whitmore, these notes paint a picture of someone who felt increasingly uncomfortable in his own home. Someone who felt controlled and monitored by his mother-in-law. That's absurd. He controlled everything in this house. I stopped myself, but it was too late. He what? Harper leaned forward. Mrs. Whitmore, if Derek was doing something to you, if he was threatening you or hurting you, that's important information. That would help us understand what happened. I wanted to tell him. God, I wanted to unburden myself, to explain that Derek had been the abuser, not me. That he'd gaslit everyone, including his own parents, into thinking I was the problem. That he'd created a false narrative to cover his own cruelty. But if I told Harper the truth about Derek's abuse, I'd be giving myself a motive for murder. Nothing, I said finally. He didn't do anything. We didn't always see eye to eye. Harper studied me for a long moment. Mrs. Whitmore, I've been doing this job for 15 years. I can tell when someone is holding back. Whatever you're not saying, it's eating you alive. I can see it. I have nothing more to say. He sighed and stood up. Okay. But if you change your mind, if you decide you want to talk, here's my card. Anytime, day or night. After he left, I sat holding his card, my hands trembling. The walls were closing in. It was only a matter of time before they found something. Some piece of evidence I'd overlooked, some witness I hadn't considered. Or before I cracked under the pressure and confessed. That night, Amy came to my room. It was the first time in weeks that she'd sought me out, and I was so happy to see her that I almost cried. She sat on the edge of my bed, looking small and lost. Mom, the police keep asking me about you and Derek. About your relationship. They're making it sound like you didn't get along. Honey. I defended you. I told them you two were fine, that there were never any problems. But Mom. She looked at me with red-rimmed eyes. Was there something going on that I didn't see? Did Derek do something to you? This was my chance. My chance to tell my daughter the truth, to make her understand that Derek hadn't been the man she thought he was. That he'd hurt me, belittled me, made my life miserable. That she should have believed me when I came to her with bruises on my arm. But if I told her now, after his death, it would sound like I was justifying murder. It would sound like I was trying to make myself look better by making Derek look worse. And worse, it would devastate her. She was already grieving the loss of her husband. How could I add to that by telling her he'd been abusing her mother? That the man she'd loved and planned a future with had been cruel and controlling? I couldn't do it. I couldn't destroy what was left of her world. No, sweetheart, I lied. Derek and I had our differences, like any two people living in the same house. But nothing serious. I promise. Then why do the police keep implying? They're looking for someone to blame. When something terrible happens, people want answers. They want someone to be responsible. But sometimes bad things just happen. Sometimes people get sick and die, and there's no one to blame. Even as I said it, I knew it was a lie. There was someone to blame. Me. Amy left, somewhat reassured but still troubled. I lay in bed that night wondering how much longer I could keep lying to her. How much longer I could look my daughter in the eye and pretend I hadn't murdered her husband. The next morning, Patricia and Robert Patterson came to the house unannounced. They'd been staying in Cedar Falls, refusing to leave until the investigation was resolved. Patricia looked at me with undisguised hatred. "We need to speak with Amy," Robert said curtly. "Privately." I called Amy downstairs and excused myself to the kitchen, but I could hear every word through the thin walls. "Amy, dear, we're worried about you," Patricia said. "Living in this house, with her. It's not healthy." "Mom Patterson, please. Eleanor is my mother. She's been a huge help with Olivia." "Has she?" Robert's voice was hard. "Or has she been manipulating you? Controlling you? The way she tried to control Derek? That's not fair. My mother isn't." "Amy, wake up." Patricia's voice rose. "Derek is dead. Murdered. And the police suspect your mother. Do you really want to keep living under the same roof as someone who might have killed your husband? The police don't know who did it. They're investigating everyone. But they keep coming back to her, don't they? Because she had motive. She resented Derek. She wanted him gone so she could have you and Olivia all to herself. Stop it. Amy was crying now. My mother would never hurt anyone. She's not capable of. Everyone is capable, given the right circumstances, Robert said. We want you to move out. Come stay with us. Bring Olivia. Get away from her until this is resolved. No. This is my home. It's her home too, and that's the problem. Please, Amy. Think about Olivia. What if Eleanor is dangerous? What if she... Get out. Amy's voice was low and fierce. Get out of my house right now. There was a stunned silence, then the sound of footsteps, the front door opening and closing. Amy came into the kitchen where I was standing frozen by the sink. Mom, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry they said those things. It's okay, honey. They're grieving. People say things when they're grieving. No, it's not okay. You're my mother. You would never hurt anyone. I know that. I've always known that. She hugged me fiercely, and I held her, this daughter who loved me, who trusted me, who believed in my innocence. This daughter I'd betrayed in the worst possible way. Over the next few days, something strange happened. The community rallied around me. People from church, neighbors, friends who'd known me for years, they all came forward to defend me. They told the police I was a gentle soul, a devoted grandmother, someone incapable of violence. Eleanor Whitmore wouldn't hurt a fly, Mrs. Henderson told Detective Ramirez, according to the rumors that filtered back to me. I've known her for 20 years. She's one of the kindest people I've ever met. Pastor Richards spoke to the police on my behalf. Mrs. Whitmore has been a pillar of our church community for decades. She volunteers with our food bank, she visits the elderly, she's always the first to offer help when someone is in need. The idea that she could commit murder is absurd. Even Amy's friend Kelly, who'd only met me a handful of times, told the police I'd been nothing but loving and supportive to Amy and Derek. The community support should have made me feel better, should have given me hope that I'd escape justice for what I'd done. Instead, it made me feel worse. All these people, speaking up for me, defending my character, insisting I was innocent, and they were wrong. They believed in a version of me that didn't exist anymore. A version that had died the moment I poured poison into Derek's tea. If you've ever lived with a secret this big, you know what it does to you. It's like carrying a stone in your chest that gets heavier every day. Every kind word, every expression of support, every person who says we know you didn't do it. It all just adds to the weight until you can barely breathe. Check the description box below for more stories about guilt and secrets. About what happens when you do something unforgivable and have to live with the knowledge of it every single day. By mid-November, the investigation seemed to be stalling. The police had interviewed everyone, searched everything, analyzed every piece of evidence they could find. And they had nothing concrete tying me to the crime. They knew Derek had been poisoned with brodifacoum. They knew he'd drunk tea every morning that I prepared. They knew there had been tension in the household. But they couldn't prove I'd put poison in his tea. They couldn't prove I'd even had access to rat poison. They couldn't prove anything. Without physical evidence, without witnesses, without a confession, they had no case. Detective Ramirez came by one final time in late November. Amy was out grocery shopping with Olivia, and I was alone in the house when she arrived. Mrs. Whitmore, I wanted to update you on the investigation. We sat in the living room again, the same places we'd sat weeks ago. But everything had changed since then. We've exhausted all our leads, she said. Without new evidence or information, we're going to have to close the active phase of the investigation. It'll remain open, of course, homicide's never really close, but we won't be actively pursuing it anymore. Relief flooded through me, so intense I felt dizzy. So that's it. It's over. For now. She looked at me intently. But Mrs. Whitmore, I want you to know something. I believe you did this. I can't prove it, but I believe it. And I think you know that I know. I said nothing. What could I say? I also believe that Derek Patterson probably gave you a reason. I've been doing this long enough to recognize patterns. The way he documented everything about you, that's controlling behavior. Abusive behavior. He was building a case against you, making you look unstable so that if you ever accused him of anything, no one would believe you. Detective. I'm not asking you to confirm or deny anything. I'm just telling you what I think. I think Derek hurt you. I think he made your life hell. And I think you reached a point where you saw only one way out. She stood up. I don't condone what you did, if you did it. Murder is never the answer. But I understand why you might have felt like you had no other choice. I didn't kill him, I said, but my voice was weak. Okay. She headed for the door, then turned back. Mrs. Whitmore, one more thing. If you did do this, you should know, it won't bring you peace. Taking a life, even a life that was causing you harm, it changes you. It leaves a mark that never goes away. I hope, for your sake, that you find a way to live with whatever you've done. After she left, I sat in the quiet house and let her words sink in. She was right. It hadn't brought me peace. I thought killing Derek would free me, would make everything better. But I was more trapped now than I'd ever been. Trapped by guilt, by lies, by the weight of a secret I'd have to carry to my grave. The investigation might be closed, but my punishment had only just begun. That night, I had the dream that would haunt me for months afterward. I was in the kitchen, making Derek's tea. But when I turned around, it wasn't Derek sitting at the table, it was Thomas. My Thomas, watching me with sad, disappointed eyes. What have you become? He asked. I had to, I said in the dream. He was hurting me. He was going to hurt Amy and Olivia. I had to protect them. By becoming a monster yourself. I'm not a monster. I'm a survivor. Eleanor, Thomas said, and his voice was so gentle, so full of love and sorrow. Survivors don't take lives. Survivors find another way. There was no other way. There's always another way. You just didn't look hard enough. I woke up crying, Thomas's words echoing in my mind. Was he right? Had there been another option I'd missed in my anger and desperation? Could I have left, found resources, gotten help? Or had Derek's abuse been so insidious, so complete, that I truly had been trapped with no escape except the one I'd chosen? I'll never know. And that uncertainty, that question of whether I'd done the only thing I could do or whether I'd simply given in to my darkest impulses, that's what keeps me awake at night. December came, bringing snow and Christmas decorations and the painful normalcy of life continuing after tragedy. Amy was starting to emerge from her grief, starting to smile occasionally, starting to plan for a future without Derek. She never knew that the future she was beginning to embrace was one I'd created for her. One I'd bought with her husband's blood. Patricia and Robert returned to Connecticut after Thanksgiving, their quest for justice unsatisfied but exhausted. Before they left, Robert pulled me aside one last time. I know you did it, he said quietly. I can't prove it, the police can't prove it, but I know. And one day, Eleanor Whitmore, you'll pay for what you took from us. Maybe not in this life, but somewhere, somehow, justice will find you. I'm sorry for your loss, I said, because what else could I say? He left without another word. That night, I went to Thomas's grave. I hadn't been since the day I'd watched them lower Derek's casket into the ground just a few rows away. I knelt in the snow, my knees soaking through, and I talked to my husband. I'm sorry, I whispered. I'm so sorry. I failed you. I failed myself. I became someone I don't recognize, and I don't know how to live with her. The wind picked up, blowing snow across the gravestones. Somewhere in the distance, a church bell tolled. Life went on, indifferent to my suffering, indifferent to my guilt. But I'd do it again, I said, surprising myself with the admission. If I had to go back, knowing everything I know now, I'd still do it. Because Amy is safe now. Olivia is safe. And maybe that makes me a monster, but it also makes me a mother who protected her child the only way she knew how. I stood up, brushed the snow from my knees, and walked back to my car. The investigation was closed. Derek was in the ground. Amy was healing. Olivia was thriving. And I was alive, free, and utterly damned by what I'd done to secure that freedom. Christmas came and went in a blur of forced cheer and painful memories. Amy tried to make it special for Olivia, decorating the house with lights and tinsel, baking cookies, playing carols on the stereo. But there was a hollowness to it all, a space where Derek should have been that no amount of festive distraction could fill. I went through the motions, helped with the decorating, wrapped presents, made my famous gingerbread house that Olivia was still too young to appreciate. But every moment felt surreal, like I was watching myself from outside my body. This was my first Christmas as a murderer. That thought echoed through every activity, every smile, every Merry Christmas that passed my lips. On Christmas morning, Amy gave me a gift, a beautiful silver locket with space for 2 photos. I thought you could put pictures of me and Olivia in it, she said, hugging me. So we're always close to your heart. I opened the locket and saw that she'd already placed the photos inside. On one side, Amy as a little girl, gap-toothed and grinning. On the other, Olivia at 6 months, all chubby cheeks and bright eyes. I love it, I said, my voice thick with emotion. Thank you, sweetheart. Mom, I don't know what I would have done without you these past few months. You've been my rock. I know this whole situation with the investigation was horrible for you, all those questions and accusations. But you never complained. You just kept taking care of us. I'm so grateful. She had no idea that her gratitude was like acid on my skin. That every kind word, every expression of love, deepened the wound of my guilt. I wore the locket every day after that. A reminder of what I'd done, and why I'd done it. A talisman of love and betrayal, innocence and blood guilt, all hanging together around my neck. January brought bitter cold and new challenges. The life insurance company was refusing to pay out Derek's policy. They were conducting their own investigation, suspicious about the circumstances of his death. Amy was stressed about money. Derek had been the primary earner, and while she had her own income, it wasn't enough to cover the mortgage and all the bills on her own. I might have to sell the house, she confessed to me one evening in late January. We were sitting in the living room after putting Olivia to bed, drinking tea, a beverage I could barely stand to look at anymore. I can't afford to keep it without Derek's income. And if the life insurance doesn't pay? You could get a roommate, I suggested. Rent out the upstairs suite. Mom, that's your space. I'm not going to kick you out. I'm not suggesting you kick me out. I'm suggesting I pay you rent. A fair amount, say, $600 a month. I know it's not market rate, but it would help, and I'd feel better contributing more directly to the household. Amy looked torn. I don't want you to feel like you have to pay to live here. You're family. And families help each other. Please, honey, let me do this. She agreed, reluctantly. Starting in February, I began paying her $600 a month from my Social Security and Thomas's life insurance money. It meant I had very little left over for myself, but it eased some of Amy's financial burden. And selfishly, it eased some of my guilt. Like I was doing penance, paying for my crime in the only way I could. But money couldn't buy absolution. February also brought something unexpected. A letter from Patricia Patterson. It arrived on a Tuesday, the handwriting on the envelope precise and controlled. I almost threw it away without opening it, afraid of what accusations it might contain. But curiosity won out. Eleanor, I'm writing to you because I can't stop thinking about my son. About what happened to him. About you. Robert believes you killed Derek. He wants to hire a private investigator. Keep pursuing this even though the police have given up. But I've been thinking, and I'm not sure anymore. I've been going through Derek's things, the boxes we brought back from Iowa. His papers, his files, his personal effects. And I found things that troubled me. Documents that suggest my son wasn't the person I thought he was. There were notes about you, yes. But reading them now, with clear eyes, they sound paranoid. Controlling. He documented everything you did, every perceived slight, every moment you were in a room he wanted to himself. It reads like someone trying to build a case against you, to paint you as unstable and intrusive. Why would he do that? Unless he was afraid you'd speak up about something. Unless he was creating a preemptive defense. I also found journal entries about Amy. About how she needed to be managed. About how she questioned him too much, stood up to him too often. He wrote about teaching her to be more compliant. Eleanor, those words chilled me to my core. I raised my son. I loved him. But I'm starting to wonder if I really knew him at all. I'm not saying I believe you killed him. I'm not saying I forgive you if you did. But I am saying that if Derek pushed you to some desperate act, if he hurt you in ways that made you feel you had no other choice, I understand why you might not have told anyone. Who would believe that Derek, golden boy Derek with his law degree and his perfect smile, could be capable of cruelty? I don't know what happened in your house. I don't know what happened in that kitchen on whatever morning Derek ingested the poison that killed him, but I'm beginning to suspect that my son might have brought his fate upon himself. I won't be pursuing this any further. Robert can do what he wants, but I'm done. I've lost my son. I don't need to know whether his death was an accident, an illness, or something else. Knowing won't bring him back. But I wanted you to know that I'm sorry. Sorry for the things Robert and I said. Sorry for the pain we added to what must already be an unbearable situation. And sorry that my son might have been the kind of man who drove someone to murder. Patricia. I read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down my face. This was the closest thing to forgiveness I would ever receive. Patricia had looked at her son with clear eyes and seen the monster underneath. She'd guessed the truth, even if she'd never say it aloud. And she was choosing to let it go. I should have felt relief. Instead, I felt the weight of responsibility crash over me like a wave. Patricia's grief, Amy's grief, Olivia growing up without a father, all of it was my doing. My choice. My fault. That night, I took out a journal I'd started keeping, a record of everything that had happened, everything I felt, everything I'd done. If I was going to carry this burden, I needed to document it. To own it completely. I murdered my son-in-law. I wrote. I planned it, executed it, and got away with it. I should feel triumphant. I should feel free. Instead, I feel like I'm drowning in guilt that has no bottom. But I also know I'd do it again. That's the worst part. I'd do it again because Amy is safe now. Because Olivia is safe. Because Derek's cruelty died with him. Does that make me evil? Or does it make me a mother who protected her child the only way she knew how? I don't know. I'll never know. The journal became my confessional. Every night, I'd write about my day, my feelings, my memories of Derek's abuse and my actions afterward. It was dangerous, physical evidence of my crime, but I needed it. Needed some place where I could be honest, where I could acknowledge what I'd done without the mask of innocence I wore for everyone else. I hid the journal in the same locked box where I'd kept the rat poison. If anyone found it, I'd go to prison. But the risk almost felt necessary. Punishment delayed but always possible, hanging over me like a sword. Spring came, bringing warmer weather and small mercies. Amy got the life insurance payout in March. Apparently the company's investigation had found nothing suspicious enough to deny the claim. The financial pressure eased. Amy started smiling more, laughing with Olivia, making plans for the future. She even started dating in April. A man named Benjamin Frost who worked in her office building, someone Derek had never met. He was gentle, kind, nothing like Derek. Amy was cautious, too soon, people said, too fast, but I encouraged her. Life was short. Happiness was precious. She deserved both. I watched her fall in love again, watched her come alive in ways she never had with Derek, and I felt a sick sort of vindication. This was what I'd freed her for. This lightness, this joy, this future unshackled from Derek's control. But I also wondered, would she have left Derek eventually on her own? Would she have woken up one day and seen him for what he was, filed for divorce, started over without anyone having to die? I'd never know that either. I'd made sure of it. By summer, life had settled into a new normal. Olivia was walking, babbling in proto-words, becoming a person with preferences and personality. She loved music, hated peas, and had a laugh that could light up the darkest room. She'd never remember her father. Would never know the man who'd been part of creating her. Was that better or worse? I couldn't decide. In June, Amy and Ben got engaged. Quick, yes, but they were both adults who knew what they wanted. Amy was radiant as she showed me the ring, a simple solitaire that caught the light and sparkled like captured stars. "Mom, I need to ask you something," she said that evening. "Will you give me away at the wedding? I know traditionally it's the father who does it, but Dad's gone, and you're the parent I have left. You're the one who's been there for me through everything. Will you walk me down the aisle?" "Of course, sweetheart. I'd be honored." We hugged, and I breathed in the scent of her shampoo, same brand she'd used since high school, and I thought about all the moments I'd been there for her. First day of school. High school graduation. Her wedding to Derek, where Thomas had walked her down the aisle. And now this, her second chance at happiness, with me at her side. The mother who'd murdered to protect her. the mother who'd do it again. The wedding was in September, a small ceremony in Pastor Richards's church with just close friends and family. Amy wore a simple cream dress and carried wildflowers. Olivia was the flower girl, wobbling down the aisle in her tiny dress while everyone laughed and cooed. I walked Amy down the aisle, her arm linked through mine, and I felt Thomas's absence like a physical ache. He should have been here. He should have been the one giving our daughter away. But he was gone, and Derek was gone, and I was the one left standing. When we reached the front of the church, Ben took Amy's hand from mine. "I'll take good care of her," he whispered to me. "You better," I whispered back. "Or you'll answer to me." It was a joke. Mostly. After the ceremony, there was a small reception at the same hotel where we'd held Derek's funeral reception. The irony wasn't lost on me, celebrating new life in the same place we'd mourned death. But everyone else seemed oblivious, happy, caught up in the joy of the moment. I stood at the edge of the room, watching Amy and Ben dance, watching Olivia be passed from person to person, everyone wanting to hold the adorable toddler. And I felt nothing. No joy, no sadness, just a vast emptiness. This was the future I'd secured for them. This happiness, this new beginning. I'd paid for it with Derek's life and my own soul. Was it worth it? Patricia Patterson would say no. Detective Ramirez would say no. The law would say no. God, if he existed, probably said no. But watching Amy's face, radiant with genuine happiness for the first time in years, watching Olivia giggle and clap her hands, watching this family I'd protected knit itself back together stronger than before, I thought maybe it was worth it. Maybe damnation was a price worth paying for your child's safety. Or maybe that's what I told myself to sleep at night. That evening, after the reception, after Amy and Ben left for a weekend honeymoon and Olivia was asleep in her crib at their house, I went back to my room. I took out my journal and wrote, Amy got married today. She looked so happy, so free, so utterly unlike the woman who'd been married to Derek. She glows with a light that Derek spent years trying to dim. I did that. I freed her. Not by supporting her through a divorce or helping her see Derek's true nature, but by poisoning him. By taking his life. I can't decide if I'm a hero or a villain. A protector or a murderer. Maybe I'm both. Maybe we're all both, capable of great love and terrible violence, sometimes in the same breath. All I know is that I can't undo what I did. Can't bring Derek back even if I wanted to. All I can do is live with it, carry it, and try to be worthy of the sacrifice I demanded of my own conscience. If that makes sense. If anything makes sense anymore. I closed the journal and locked it away, then lay in bed staring at the ceiling. Tomorrow I'd wake up and make breakfast and watch Olivia and smile at Amy and Ben. I'd play the role of devoted mother and grandmother, the woman who'd do anything for her family. And it wouldn't be an act. Because it was true. I would do anything for my family. Even murder. Especially murder. The first anniversary of Derek's death came in October. Amy didn't acknowledge it. She was too happy in her new marriage, too focused on her new life with Ben. But I remembered. How could I not? October 29th, the day Derek had driven to work with poison already working through his system. The day I'd become a murderer. I went to the cemetery that morning while Amy was at work and Ben was watching Olivia. Thomas's grave first, where I knelt and whispered apologies I'd repeated 1,000 times. Then, forcing myself, I walked to Derek's grave. The headstone was expensive, Patricia and Robert's doing. Black granite with gold lettering. Derek James Patterson. Beloved son, husband, father. Gone too soon. Beloved. The word tasted like ash. I'm not sorry, I told the headstone. Told Derek, wherever he was. I should be, but I'm not. You made my life hell. You hurt me, belittled me, made me feel like I was nothing. And you were starting to do the same to Amy. I saw it. The way you controlled her, criticized her, made her second-guess herself. Another year, 2 years, and she would have been a shadow of herself. The wind rustled the leaves around me. No answer came, not that I expected one. But I am sorry that Olivia will never know her father. That she'll grow up with a hole where you should have been. Whatever you were to me, to Amy, you could have been something better to her. And I took that chance away. I stood there for a long time, waiting to feel something. Regret, relief, anything. but there was only the emptiness that had become my constant companion. As I walked back to my car, I saw Detective Ramirez standing by the cemetery gate. My heart jumped, but she wasn't there to arrest me. She was just there. "Mrs. Whitmore," she said as I approached. "Detective." "1 year," she said quietly. "How are you holding up?" "I'm fine." "Are you?" She studied my face. "Because you look like someone carrying a heavy burden. Someone who hasn't slept well in a long time." "I'm 64 years old. No one sleeps well at 64. "That's not what I mean, and you know it." She moved closer, her voice dropping. "Mrs. Whitmore, I want you to know something. The case is still officially open. And about once a month, I pull the file and look through it again. Just in case I missed something. Just in case new evidence turns up." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I want you to know that I haven't forgotten. I haven't moved on. And if you ever decide you want to talk about what really happened, I'm still here." "There's nothing to talk about." "Okay." She handed me her card. I already had 3 of them, but I took this one too. "My offer stands. Anytime. Day or night." She walked away, leaving me standing in the cemetery parking lot with her card in my hand and dread in my heart. That night, I dreamed about Derek for the first time since he died. We were in the kitchen, and I was making his tea. But this time, he knew. He watched me pour the poison in, watched me stir it, watched me carry it to the table. And he drank it anyway, maintaining eye contact the whole time, a smile on his face. "Did you really think this would set you free?" he asked as the poison took hold. "I'll haunt you forever, Eleanor. Every day, every night, for the rest of your life. You killed me, but I'm the one who'll destroy you in the end." I woke up sweating, my heart racing. The clock read 3:47 a.m. The house was quiet except for the usual settling sounds, but I felt Derek's presence everywhere. In the shadows, in the hallway, in the kitchen where I'd committed my crime. I got up, pulled on my robe, and went downstairs. I stood in the kitchen, looking at the table where Derek used to sit. The chair was gone. Amy had gotten rid of all of Derek's furniture when she married Ben. But I could still see him there, scrolling through his tablet, drinking his poison tea, completely unaware that he had less than a week to live. "You were right," I whispered to the ghost I couldn't see. "You do haunt me. Every moment. Every day. I thought killing you would give me peace, but it just gave me this weight I'll carry until I die." No answer came. Ghosts never answer, except in dreams. I made myself coffee and sat at the table as the sun came up, and I made a decision. I couldn't live like this anymore. Couldn't keep pretending everything was fine when I was drowning in guilt and secrets. I needed to talk to someone. Not the police, I wasn't ready to confess, might never be ready, but someone. Anyone who could hear the truth and help me figure out how to live with what I'd done. The only person I could think of was Pastor Richards. I called the church office that morning and made an appointment to see him. His secretary, sweet Mrs. Brennan, who'd worked at St. Michael's for 30 years, sounded pleased to hear from me. "Oh, Eleanor. Pastor Richards will be so happy to see you. You've missed so many services lately." "I know. I've been struggling." "Well, he's wonderful with that. He has an opening tomorrow at 2 o'clock, if that works." "That's perfect. Thank you." I spent the rest of the day rehearsing what I'd say. How much I could reveal without actually confessing to murder. Pastor Richards was bound by confidentiality, wasn't he? What was said in his office stayed there, like a confessional in the Catholic Church. But I wasn't Catholic. I was Methodist. And I wasn't entirely sure what the rules were. The next afternoon, I sat in Pastor Richards's office, surrounded by bookshelves full of theology texts and photographs of his grandchildren. He was in his 70s now, with white hair and kind eyes that had seen decades of human suffering and sin. "Eleanor," he said warmly, gesturing to the chair across from his desk. "It's so good to see you. Mrs. Brennan said you wanted to talk." "Yes, Pastor. I've been struggling with something. Something I can't tell anyone else." "I see. Well, you know that what you share with me stays between us, unless you're planning to harm yourself or someone else. Is this about Derek's death?" My breath caught. "What makes you say that?" "Eleanor, I've been a pastor for 45 years. I've sat with a lot of people carrying heavy burdens. And you've been carrying something since Derek died. Something that's eating you alive. I can see it in your face every time you're here at church. I haven't been to church much lately. Exactly. You used to come every Sunday. Now you barely make it once a month. That tells me something's wrong. I looked down at my hands, twisted together in my lap. What if I did something terrible? Something I can't undo. Something that goes against everything I was raised to believe. Did you hurt someone? The direct question knocked the air from my lungs. Pastor, I need to know. If I tell you something in confidence, can you keep it secret? Even if it's really bad. Unless you're planning to hurt someone in the future, yes. What you tell me stays here. I took a deep breath and decided to tell him. Not all of it, not the details that could be used in court, but enough. Enough to unburden my soul, at least partially. Derek was hurting me, I said quietly. Not physically, well, once physically, but mostly emotionally. He was cruel. Controlling. He made me feel worthless, like I didn't deserve to exist in my own daughter's home. And Amy didn't believe me. She chose him over me. That must have been very painful. It was unbearable. And I started thinking, dark thoughts. Thoughts about what life would be like if Derek wasn't in it anymore. If something happened to him. If he just disappeared. Pastor Richards was quiet, letting me continue at my own pace. And then he died. Very suddenly. Very conveniently. And everyone assumed it was natural, or an accident, or just one of those tragic things that happens. But Pastor. I looked up at him, tears streaming down my face. What if it wasn't? What if someone made it happen? What if I... Stop. He held up his hand gently. Eleanor, I need to be very careful here about what I ask you and what you tell me. So let me just say this. If you did something, or if you know something about Derek's death, you need to seriously consider going to the police. Not because I would tell them, I wouldn't, but because living with this kind of secret will destroy you. It's already destroying you. I can't go to the police. Why not? Because Amy needs me. Olivia needs me. If I'm in prison, who will take care of them? Who will protect them? Amy has Ben now. She's building a new life. She'll be okay. But what about Olivia? She's already lost one parent. If I confess, she loses another. Her grandmother, the only connection she has to her heritage, to her grandfather Thomas. I can't do that to her. Pastor Richards leaned back in his chair, his expression troubled. Eleanor, let me ask you something. If you did what you're implying you might have done, do you believe you're going to hell? The question hit me like a punch. I don't know. Maybe. Probably. And does that scare you? Yes. But not as much as it should. Not as much as the idea of Olivia growing up with Derek as her father scared me. So you prioritized earthly justice over divine justice. I prioritized protecting my family. Isn't that what we're supposed to do? Isn't family supposed to come first? Not at the cost of another person's life, Eleanor. Not like that. He sighed heavily. I understand why you might have felt desperate. I believe you that Derek was hurting you. But taking a life, that's not protection. That's revenge. And revenge belongs to God, not to us. Easy to say when you're not the one being hurt. You're right. It is easy to say from where I'm sitting. But Eleanor, the commandment is clear. Thou shalt not kill. There's no exception for unless they're really terrible to you. There's no loophole for abuse victims. It's absolute. Then what was I supposed to do? Just endure it. Let him hurt me, let him start hurting Amy, let him poison Olivia's childhood with his cruelty? Just suffer in silence and hope God would eventually do something. You could have left. You could have called the police. You could have told Amy the full truth and refused to stay silent. You had options. Options that would have left me homeless, penniless, and alone. Options that would have destroyed my relationship with my daughter because she wouldn't have believed me. I tried telling her, Pastor. She chose Derek. Then you could have accepted that and moved on. Found your own place, your own life, and loved Amy and Olivia from a distance. And let Derek hurt them without anyone there to witness it. Without anyone to protect them. We sat in silence for a long moment. Finally, Pastor Richards spoke again, his voice infinitely sad. Eleanor, I can't tell you what to do. I can't absolve you of this sin, if it is what I think it is. I can only tell you that you need to make peace with God and with yourself. And I don't think you can do that while living a lie. So you think I should confess? Turn myself in? I think you should pray about it. Really pray. Ask God for guidance. And whatever answer you receive, follow it. Even if it's hard. Especially if it's hard. I left his office with no more clarity than I'd arrived with. Prayer. He wanted me to pray. But every time I tried to pray, the words died in my throat. How could I ask God for forgiveness when I wasn't actually sorry? How could I repent when I'd do the same thing again? That night, I tried anyway. I knelt by my bed the way my mother had taught me when I was a little girl, folded my hands, and tried to pray. Dear God, I don't know what to say. I don't know how to talk to you about this. I killed a man. I murdered my son-in-law. And I should be sorry, I know I should, but I can't make myself feel it. The words came haltingly, painfully. I'm sorry for a lot of things. Sorry that Derek had to die. Sorry that Amy is grieving. Sorry that Olivia will never know her father. Sorry for the pain I've caused so many people. But I'm not sorry that Derek is gone. I'm not sorry that his cruelty died with him. And I don't know how to reconcile those two things. Silence answered me. God, if he was listening, had nothing to say. If you're punishing me with this guilt, with this weight, I accept it. I deserve it. But please don't punish Amy and Olivia for what I did. They're innocent. They deserve happiness. That's all I ask. I stayed on my knees for a long time, waiting for some sign, some feeling of peace or condemnation. But there was nothing. Just the emptiness that had become my constant companion. The next few weeks passed in a haze. I went through the motions of daily life, caring for Olivia when Amy needed help, cooking meals, cleaning the house. But I felt disconnected from it all, like I was watching myself from a distance. Ben noticed. Eleanor, are you feeling okay? He asked one evening when he'd come to pick up Olivia. You seem distant lately. I'm fine, I said automatically. Just tired. Amy's worried about you. She says you've been different since Derek's death. More withdrawn. I'm grieving too, I said, which was technically true, even if I was grieving my own lost innocence rather than Derek's life. It takes time. I know. Just, if you ever need to talk, I'm here. You're family now. Family. This kind man who'd married my daughter, who treated Olivia like his own child, who'd accepted me into his life without question, he considered me family. And I was lying to him every single day. In November, something happened that shook me out of my numbness. Amy came to me with news that she was pregnant. Mom, I'm having a baby. She was radiant, glowing with joy. I know it's fast, but we're so happy. And Olivia is going to be a big sister. I hugged her, feeling her happiness and her hope, and I thought about the child growing inside her. A child who would never know Derek. A child who would grow up in a house free from his toxicity. A child who existed because I'd killed Derek. Would this baby thank me someday if they knew the truth? Would they understand that they only existed because their grandmother was a murderer? Or would they be horrified, disgusted, afraid of me? Mom, are you crying? Happy tears. I lied. I'm just so happy for you, sweetheart. That night, I had another dream. But this time, it wasn't Derek haunting me. It was Olivia, grown into a teenager, standing in my room. Grandma, I know what you did, Dream Olivia said. I know you killed my father. I did it to protect you, I tried to say, but no sound came out. I didn't need protection. I needed a father. You took that from me. You took him from me, and I'll never forgive you. I woke up sobbing, the dream so vivid I could still see Olivia's accusing eyes. Was that my future? Would she eventually learn the truth and hate me for it? Would I lose her love, lose everything, after sacrificing so much? I pulled out my journal and wrote, Amy is pregnant. A new life, a new beginning. This baby will never know Derek, will never be hurt by him. I should feel vindicated, triumphant. Instead, I feel the weight of what I stole from Olivia. The father she'll never know. The memories she'll never make. Asterisk people keep saying Derek's death was tragic. And it was, for Amy, For Olivia, for Patricia and Robert. But was it tragic for me? I survived. I'm free. I'm safe. Asterisk. Asterisk, but I'm also damned. And I'm starting to think that hell isn't a place you go after you die. Hell is living every day knowing what you've done and having to smile and pretend everything is fine. Asterisk. Asterisk, hell is right here. Right now. In my chest, in my conscience, in the space between who I was and who I've become. Asterisk. Asterisk, and there's no escape from it. Not in this life. Asterisk. December brought Christmas again, and with it, memories of the previous year. The first Christmas without Derek, when Amy had been drowning in grief. Now she was pregnant and happy, decorating with enthusiasm, planning for the future. I want to start a new tradition, she announced. Every Christmas, we'll go around the table and say what we're grateful for. I'll start. I'm grateful for Ben, for Olivia, for this new baby, and for my mom who's always been there for me. Everyone looked at me expectantly. Ben, Amy, even little Olivia who was clapping her hands. I'm grateful for all of you, I said. For this family, for second chances, for... I choked on the words. For being loved despite my flaws. Amy hugged me. Mom, you're amazing. Don't ever forget that. But I wasn't amazing. I was a murderer who'd escaped justice. A liar who wore the mask of a loving grandmother while hiding a terrible secret. An imposter in my own life. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, I sat alone in the living room looking at the Christmas tree. Lights twinkling, presents underneath, everything picture perfect. This was the life I'd wanted. The life I'd killed for. And I hated it. Hated the lying, the pretending, the constant fear that someday, somehow, the truth would come out. I took out Detective Ramirez's card and stared at it for a long time. One phone call. That's all it would take. One phone call, and this would all be over. I'd confess, go to prison, and at least I'd have the relief of honesty. At least I wouldn't have to pretend anymore. But then I thought about Amy, 8 weeks pregnant. About Olivia, who called me Gamma and loved when I read her stories. About the new baby who would need a grandmother. I couldn't do it. Couldn't confess. Couldn't destroy everything I'd worked to build. So I put the card away, turned off the Christmas lights, and went to bed. Tomorrow I'd wake up and do it all over again. Smile, laugh, pretend. Play the role of Eleanor Whitmore, devoted mother and grandmother. And I'd carry my secret to the grave, no matter how heavy it became. Amy's baby, a boy named Thomas, after my late husband, was born in July on a sweltering afternoon when the hospital's air conditioning was struggling to keep up. I held him in my arms, this tiny perfect creature with his father's nose and Amy's chin, and I felt something crack open inside me. Love, yes. But also terror. Because this child was the embodiment of everything I'd done. He existed in this form, with Ben as his father, in a happy, healthy home, because I'd murdered Derek. If Derek had lived, if I'd found another way, Amy might have eventually left him and met Ben anyway. Or she might have stayed trapped in an unhappy marriage, might have never had this child, might have lived a smaller, sadder life. I'd never know which version of the future would have happened. I'd made sure of it. Want to hold your great-nephew, Olivia? Amy asked. Olivia was 2 now, talking in full sentences and full of opinions. Baby Thomas is tiny, Olivia observed, peering at her new brother with interest. Why is he so red? Everyone laughed. Normal family moments. Normal joy. While I stood there holding a baby and thinking about murder, Ben's parents came to visit, lovely people from Minnesota who brought casseroles and offered to help with anything needed. They treated me with warmth and respect, never knowing that they were embracing a killer into their family. Eleanor, you must be so proud, Ben's mother Janet said. 2 beautiful grandchildren, a daughter who's happily married. You've raised Amy so well. Thank you, I said, the words ashes in my mouth. That night, after everyone left and the house settled into sleep, I went to my room and pulled out my journal. I hadn't written in it in weeks, afraid of what I might say, but tonight I needed to. Asterisk baby Thomas came today. 7 pounds 9 ounces. Perfect in every way. I held him and thought, you exist because I'm a murderer. Your happiness, your family, your future, all of it built on the foundation of your uncle's death. Asterisk. Asterisk, does that make you blessed or cursed? Will you thank me someday, or will you spit on my grave? Asterisk. Asterisk, I don't know. I don't know anything anymore except that I love you already, and I'd kill again to protect you. That's what I've become. A woman who measures love in bodies. A woman who believes that murder is acceptable if the cause is just ... God help me. God help us all ... The summer passed in a blur of diapers and feedings and sleepless nights. I helped Amy as much as I could, grateful for the exhaustion that kept me too busy to think. But at night, in the quiet hours, the guilt came roaring back. I started having panic attacks. They'd come out of nowhere. I'd be folding laundry or making dinner, and suddenly I couldn't breathe. My heart would race, my vision would narrow, and I'd be convinced that this was it. This was my punishment. I was dying, and I deserved it. Amy noticed, of course. Mom, I think you should see a doctor. These episodes you're having, it sounds like anxiety. I'm fine. It's just stress. You're not fine. Please, for me, make an appointment. So I did, because refusing would have raised suspicions. Dr. Morrison, a kind woman in her 50s, listened to my symptoms and prescribed anti-anxiety medication. Have you experienced any major stressors recently? She asked. Loss, trauma, significant life changes. My son-in-law died suddenly about 2 years ago, I said. That was difficult. I'm so sorry. Grief can manifest in physical symptoms, especially if you haven't properly processed it. Have you considered therapy? Therapy. Where I'd have to talk about my feelings, my fears, my guilt. Where a trained professional might see through my lies. I'll think about it, I said, knowing I never would. The medication helped with the panic attacks, but it couldn't touch the deeper problem. The knowledge of what I'd done, the constant fear of discovery, the weight of living a lie every single day. In September, on what would have been Derek's 38th birthday, I drove to his grave. I hadn't been since the 1-year anniversary, couldn't bear to face him even in death. But something drew me there that day. The grave was well maintained. Patricia must have been paying for upkeep. Fresh flowers sat in the vase, pink roses that Derek would have hated. He'd always preferred bold colors, dramatic gestures. I stood there looking at his name carved in granite and tried to feel something other than emptiness. Your son is beautiful, I said aloud. Thomas. Amy named him after my husband, but I think you'd like him anyway. He has your nose. Your eyes, maybe, though it's hard to tell yet. The wind rustled through the cemetery trees. No response, but I hadn't expected one. I've been thinking about what you said in my dream. That you'd haunt me forever. You were right. You do. Every day. Every moment. I killed you, but in a way, you killed me too. The person I was before, she's gone. Dead as you are. I knelt down, picked up a leaf that had fallen on the grave, and crushed it in my hand. I don't regret it, though. I should, but I don't. Amy is happy. Really, genuinely happy for the first time since she married you. And I know, that if you'd lived, you would have destroyed that happiness. You would have broken her down until there was nothing left. So no, I don't regret killing you. I just regret that it had to come to that. I regret that you were the kind of man who made murder seem like the only option. I stood up, brushed the leaf fragments from my hands, and walked away. Behind me, Derek's grave sat silent in the afternoon sun. No thunderbolts from heaven. No divine retribution. Just a dead man and the woman who'd killed him, both trapped in their own ways. October brought the 3-year anniversary of Derek's death. I'd thought it might get easier with time, that the guilt would fade or the fear would lessen. But if anything, it had gotten worse. The weight of the secret had compressed into something dense and heavy, a black hole in my chest that pulled everything into it. I couldn't eat. Couldn't sleep without nightmares. Couldn't look at myself in the mirror without seeing a monster. Amy noticed my deterioration. Mom, you're scaring me. You've lost so much weight. You look exhausted all the time. Please see a therapist. Or talk to Pastor Richards again. Or talk to me. Just don't shut me out. I'm okay, honey. Just getting older. It happens to everyone. You're 65. That's not old. This isn't normal aging. This is something else. Are you sick? Is there something you're not telling me? Yes, I wanted to scream. I'm sick with guilt. I'm dying from the inside out because I killed your first husband and I can't tell anyone and it's destroying me piece by piece. Instead, I smiled. I promise, I'm fine. Just need to take better care of myself. That night, I had the worst nightmare yet. I was in prison, wearing an orange jumpsuit, sitting across from Amy in a visiting room. Olivia was there too, maybe 10 years old now, looking at me with Derek's eyes. "Why did you do it, Grandma?" Olivia asked. "I was protecting you," I said. "But I didn't ask you to. I didn't ask you to kill my daddy." "Your daddy was a bad man. He was still my daddy. And you took him away. You took him away and then you lied about it. You made me love a murderer." I woke up screaming, sweat-soaked and shaking. Amy came running, Ben right behind her. Mom, what's wrong?" "Just a nightmare," I gasped. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." "This is the third time this week," Ben said quietly to Amy. "She needs help. Professional help." They were right. I needed help. But the only help that would actually solve the problem was a confession, and I couldn't do that. Wouldn't do that. So I spiraled. In November, I stopped taking the anti-anxiety medication. It wasn't working anyway, and part of me felt like I deserved to suffer. Like the panic attacks and nightmares were appropriate punishment for what I'd done. I stopped eating regularly. Food tasted like nothing, like ash and cardboard. I lost 15 pounds in a month. I stopped seeing friends, stopped going to church, stopped doing anything except the bare minimum to care for Olivia and Thomas when Amy needed help. I was dying. Maybe not physically, though who knew, with the weight loss and the stress, but spiritually. The Eleanor who'd existed before Derek's death was gone, and this new Eleanor, this murderer pretending to be a grandmother, was slowly crumbling into nothing. In mid-December, Amy staged an intervention. She sat me down with Ben, with Pastor Richards, with Dr. Morrison. "Mom, we're all worried about you," Amy said, tears streaming down her face. "You're disappearing in front of us. We want to help, but you have to let us in. You have to tell us what's wrong." 4 pairs of eyes, all looking at me with concern and love. For people who cared about me, who wanted to help me, who had no idea what I'd done. This was my chance. My chance to confess, to unburden myself, to finally tell the truth. But when I opened my mouth, what came out was, "I think I might be depressed. The grief from losing Thomas, from Derek's death, it's all caught up with me. I need help." Not a lie, exactly, but not the truth either. They arranged for me to see a therapist, Dr. Helen Carver, a specialist in grief and trauma. Twice a week, I sat in her comfortable office with its soft lighting and box of tissues, and I talked about everything except the one thing that actually mattered. I talked about losing Thomas. About feeling displaced in Amy's home. About the challenges of aging. About my fear of becoming irrelevant, invisible, forgotten. All true. All important. All completely beside the point. Dr. Carver was kind and patient. She gave me coping strategies, breathing exercises, homework assignments. She prescribed different medications, adjusted dosages, monitored my progress. And slowly, incrementally, I started to improve. Not because I was healing, but because I got better at pretending. Better at wearing the mask. Better at being the Eleanor everyone wanted me to be. By Christmas, I'd gained back some of the weight. I was sleeping a bit better, the new medication helped, or maybe I was just too exhausted to dream. I was smiling more, laughing occasionally, playing with Olivia and Thomas like a normal grandmother. "You seem so much better, Mom," Amy said on Christmas Eve. "I'm so proud of you for getting help." "Thank you, sweetie. I'm trying." And I was trying. Trying to live with what I'd done. Trying to be worthy of their love. Trying to accept that I'd never be free of the guilt, but I could learn to carry it without collapsing under its weight. That night, after everyone went to bed, I stood in the kitchen where it had all happened. The same kitchen, though Amy had remodeled it last year. New cabinets, new countertops, new flooring. But I could still see Derek sitting at the table. Could still see myself pouring poison into his tea. "I'm still here," I whispered to his ghost. "I'm still standing. You didn't destroy me. Not completely." But even as I said it, I knew it wasn't entirely true. Derek had destroyed the old me. The innocent me. The me who'd believed in justice and law and doing the right thing. That Eleanor was as dead as Derek. What remained was this new version, harder, darker, capable of terrible things. A survivor, yes, but at what cost? I'd never know if the cost was worth it. But I'd paid it anyway, and now I had to live with the transaction. 5 years. 5 years since the morning I poisoned Derek Patterson. 5 years of carrying this secret, this burden, this sin. I'm 68 years old now. My hair has gone completely white. My hands shake sometimes, from age, from stress, from the constant weight of what I've done. I take medication for anxiety, for high blood pressure, for the insomnia that never quite goes away. But I'm still here. Still alive. Still free. Olivia is 7 now, a bright, curious first grader who loves science and horses and telling elaborate stories. She has no memory of Derek. To her, Ben is simply Daddy, the only father she's ever known. Sometimes she asks about the man in the pictures. That's your birth father, Amy tells her. He died when you were a baby. But there's no grief in her questions. Just curiosity, the way children ask about dinosaurs or ancient Egypt. Something that existed once but has no bearing on her present life. Thomas is 4, a whirlwind of energy and mischief. He looks nothing like Derek, thank God. All Ben and Amy, with his sandy brown hair and freckles and gap-toothed grin. And there's Emma now, too. Amy and Ben's daughter, born 2 years ago. 3 grandchildren, all healthy and happy and growing up in a home filled with love and laughter. This is what I bought with Derek's life. This happiness. This peace. Was it worth it? I still don't know. Last month, something happened that shook me out of the fragile equilibrium I'd built. Detective Ramirez called. Mrs. Whitmore, this is Lisa Ramirez. Do you have a moment to talk? My heart stopped. After 5 years, I'd let myself believe they'd forgotten. That the case was truly closed, buried under new crimes and more pressing concerns. What's this about? My voice was steady, remarkably so. I'm retiring next month. 30 years with the department. And before I go, I've been closing out my old cases, making sure everything's documented properly. Derek Patterson's case came across my desk again. I see. Mrs. Whitmore, I want you to know that I still believe you killed him. I have no new evidence, no new leads, nothing that would justify reopening the investigation. But I believe it. I've believed it from the beginning. Why are you telling me this? Because in 30 years of doing this job, I've learned that sometimes the law and justice aren't the same thing. Sometimes people do terrible things for reasons that make sense, even if those reasons don't excuse the crime. And I think that's what happened with you and Derek. I said nothing. What could I say? I also want you to know that if you ever decide to confess, I won't be the one pursuing the case. I'll be retired, living in Florida, trying to forget all the awful things I've seen. So if you need to unburden yourself, now would be the time. Detective Ramirez, I appreciate your call. But I have nothing to confess. Derek's death was a tragedy, but I had nothing to do with it. She was quiet for a moment. Then, okay. Take care of yourself, Mrs. Whitmore. And those grandchildren of yours. She hung up, leaving me shaking and breathless. This was my chance. My last chance, probably, to confess before Ramirez retired and took her institutional knowledge with her. To finally tell the truth and face the consequences. But I didn't call her back. Because the truth is, I can't. Can't destroy Amy's happiness. Can't take myself away from these children who love me. Can't shatter the life I've built on the foundation of Derek's death. So I'll carry this secret until I die. And when I die, which can't be too many years away now, given my age and my health, the truth will die with me. Unless I write it down. Which is what I'm doing now. This journal, this confession, this record of everything that happened. I'm putting it in a safe deposit box at the bank with instructions that it should be given to Amy when I die. Not before. I can't let her know while I'm alive, can't see her face when she learns what I did. But she deserves to know the truth eventually. To understand who her mother really was. Let her decide then what to do with the information. Whether to go to the police, whether to tell Olivia and Thomas and Emma, whether to hate me or forgive me or something in between. It won't be my problem anymore. I'll be dead, beyond judgment, beyond consequence. Or maybe not. Maybe there is a hell, and maybe I'll spend eternity paying for what I did. I don't know. I've stopped pretending to understand God or divine justice or any of it. All I know is this. I was a woman pushed past her breaking point. I was abused, isolated, disbelieved, and desperate. And I made a choice that I can never unmake. Do I regret it? Sometimes. When I hold Emma and think about how Derek never got to meet her, never got the chance to be better. When Olivia talks about wanting to be a scientist and I wonder what dreams Derek might have had for her. When I see Amy and Ben together and think about how she might have eventually found happiness even if Derek had lived, if she'd just been strong enough to leave. But mostly I don't regret it. Because Amy is thriving. Olivia is confident and bold, not walking on eggshells around an unpredictable father. Thomas and Emma are growing up in a home where love isn't conditional, where mistakes aren't punished with cruelty. This is the future I gave them. Imperfect, built on violence, but still better than the alternative. If that makes me a monster, then I'm a monster. I can live with that. Last week, I went to both graves, Thomas's and Derek's. Thomas first, where I told him about the grandchildren he never got to meet. About Amy's happiness. About how much I miss him, still, after all these years. Then Derek's grave, where I said something I'd never said before. I'm sorry you're dead. Not sorry I killed you, I'd do it again. But sorry that you were the kind of man who made it necessary. Sorry that you chose cruelty over kindness, control over love. Sorry that you wasted your potential on hurting people instead of helping them. A shadow fell across me, and I looked up to see an older woman standing nearby. She was visiting a grave a few rows over, but she'd clearly heard me talking. Forgiveness is hard, she said gently, but holding on to anger poisons us more than it hurts them. I almost laughed. If only she knew. You're right, I said instead. I'm working on letting go. Good. Life's too short to spend it weighed down by the dead. She walked away, leaving me with her words echoing in my head. Life's too short to spend it weighed down by the dead. But what if you're the reason they're dead? What if you're carrying them because you put them in the ground? There's no easy answer to that. Tonight is Christmas Eve. The house is full of people and noise and laughter. Amy and Ben are wrapping last-minute presents. Olivia is convinced she heard reindeer on the roof. Thomas is hyper on sugar cookies. Emma is toddling around in a Santa dress, pure chaos and joy. And I'm sitting here in my room, writing the final entry in this journal that will become my posthumous confession. If you're reading this, Amy, I'm dead. And you now know the truth about what I did. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't expect you to understand. I just need you to know that everything I did because I loved you. Because I couldn't stand watching Derek hurt you, couldn't bear the thought of him turning his cruelty on Olivia. Was I right to do it? Probably not. Almost certainly not. Murder is wrong, I know that. I've always known that. But in that moment, in the months leading up to that Tuesday morning, it felt like the only way out. The only way to protect you and Olivia from years of escalating abuse. I know now that there were other options. I could have been stronger, could have found resources, could have insisted you see the truth even if it meant damaging our relationship. But I was scared and tired and so desperate. And desperate people do desperate things. If I could go back, would I choose differently? I don't know. I want to say yes, that I'd find another way, a better way. But I also know what Derek was, what he was capable of, what he would have done to you and Olivia over time. So maybe I wouldn't change anything. Maybe I'd still pour that powder into his tea and watch him drink it and wait. I've paid for it, if that matters. Not in prison, not in any legal sense. But I've paid in sleepless nights and panic attacks and 5 years of carrying a weight that nearly crushed me. I've paid in the distance between who I was and who I became. I've paid in the knowledge that my grandchildren love a woman who's capable of murder. That's my punishment, and it's been more than enough. Please don't tell the children. Not Olivia, not Thomas, not Emma. Let them remember me as Grandma Eleanor who made cookies and read stories and loved them unconditionally. They don't need to know what I did. They don't need to carry that burden. But you needed to know. You deserve the truth, even if it comes too late for me to face the consequences. I love you, Amy. I always have. Everything I did, right or wrong, good or evil, it was all because I loved you too much to watch you suffer. I hope you can forgive me someday. But I'll understand if you can't. Your mother, Eleanor. I seal the journal and place it in an envelope along with a letter to my lawyer with instructions. It goes in the safe deposit box tomorrow. And then it's done. The confession is written, the truth is documented, and I can finally stop carrying it alone. Tonight, I'll go downstairs and join my family. I'll hold Emma while she fights sleep, her tiny fist wrapped around my finger. I'll help Olivia set out cookies for Santa. I'll laugh with Amy and Ben and pretend that everything is normal. Because for them, it is normal. This is their life, messy and beautiful and uncomplicated by the dark truth lurking beneath. And I'll let them keep that innocence for as long as I can. They deserve it. I'm writing this final section a week later, on New Year's Eve, because something happened that I need to document. Something that changed everything, one last time. Ben's parents were visiting, and during dinner, Janet mentioned that her brother had just gone through a divorce after 20 years of marriage. He finally got the courage to leave, she said. His wife was awful to him. Controlling, manipulative, cruel. But he stayed for so long because he thought divorce would destroy the kids. How are the kids handling it? Amy asked. Better than expected. In fact, his daughter told him she was relieved. She said she always knew something was wrong at home, always felt the tension. She's happier now that her parents are apart. Amy went very quiet. Later, after everyone had gone to bed, she came to my room. She sat on the edge of my bed, looking younger than her 38 years. Mom, can I ask you something? About Derek. My heart stopped. Of course, honey. Was he good to you? I mean really good to you, not just polite in front of me. When you two were alone, was he kind? This was it. 5 years later, she was finally asking the question I'd been afraid to answer. I could lie. Could protect Derek's memory, protect her from the truth, maintain the fiction that her first marriage had been happy until tragedy struck. But I was so tired of lying. No, I said quietly. He wasn't kind to me. He was cruel. He made me feel small and unwelcome and worthless. He grabbed me hard enough to leave bruises. He played mind games. He made my life hell, and when I tried to tell you, you didn't believe me. Amy's face crumpled. Oh, Mom. Mom, I'm so sorry. I should have believed you. I should have seen it. But I was so caught up in trying to make my marriage work, trying to be the perfect wife and mother, that I couldn't admit Derek was. God, I couldn't admit he was abusive. You weren't ready to see it. I was scared to see it. Because if I admitted Derek was hurting you, I'd have to admit he might hurt me too. Or Olivia. And I couldn't face that. So I told myself you were exaggerating, being oversensitive, imagining things. I chose him over you, and I will regret that for the rest of my life. She was crying now, and I held her while she sobbed against my shoulder. My daughter, finally believing me. 5 years too late, but believing me nonetheless. I've been thinking about it a lot lately, she said when she could speak again. About the way Derek was. Little things I dismissed at the time, but that seems significant now. The way he criticized everything I did. The way he isolated me from my friends. The way he made me feel like I had to earn his approval every single day. He was abusive to you too. Yes. Not physically, but emotionally. And if he'd lived longer, if we'd stayed married, I think it would have gotten worse. I think eventually he would have started hurting me the way he hurt you. And maybe Olivia too, once she was old enough to have opinions that didn't match his. We sat in silence for a moment. Then Amy said something that made my blood run cold. Sometimes I'm glad he died. Is that terrible? Sometimes I think about what my life would be like if he hadn't gotten sick, and I'm grateful I don't have to live in that reality. Is that awful of me? No, honey. It's honest. I feel so guilty for feeling that way. Like I'm a bad person for being grateful my husband died. You're not a bad person. You're a survivor who's recognizing how close you came to a lifetime of misery. She hugged me tighter. Thank you for never giving up on me. For staying even when Derek made it unbearable. For being there for Olivia and me even when I didn't deserve it. You always deserved it. You're my daughter. I'd do anything for you. Anything. Including murder. But I didn't say that part. After Amy left, I sat alone in my room with my heart pounding. She'd given me absolution without knowing she'd done it. She'd confirmed that Derek was exactly who I'd thought he was, that my assessment of the danger he posed was accurate, that the future I'd prevented would have been every bit as terrible as I'd feared. Does that justify what I did? No. Murder is still murder. But it means I wasn't crazy. Wasn't overreacting. Wasn't the paranoid, jealous mother-in-law that Derek had tried to paint me as. I was a woman who saw clearly and acted decisively, even if the action was unforgivable. I pulled out the sealed envelope with my confession, the one I'd planned to put in the safe deposit box tomorrow. And I sat there holding it, wondering, should I still leave this confession? Should I burden Amy with the truth after what she'd just shared with me? She was finally healing from Derek's abuse, finally recognizing it for what it was. Did she need to know that her mother had murdered him? Or should I destroy it? Burn it? Let the truth die with me. Give Amy the gift of never having to know, never having to choose between her mother and the law. I sat there for hours, the envelope in my hands, weighing the options. Finally, I made my decision. I took the envelope to the fireplace downstairs. The house was dark and quiet, everyone asleep. I knelt in front of the cold hearth, struck a match, and held it to the corner of the envelope. The paper caught, flames licking up the sides. I watched my confession burn, all those pages of truth and guilt and justification, turning to ash. The smoke detector didn't go off. No one woke up. The evidence of my crime disappeared into nothing, just like Derek had. When it was done, when there was nothing left but ashes, I swept them up and flushed them down the toilet. Gone. Completely gone. The only confession that exists now is the one in my head. And when I die, that dies too. Amy will never know what I did. Olivia, Thomas, and Emma will never know. The truth will be buried with me, literally, when they lower my casket into the ground 3 rows over from Derek's grave. Is this the right choice? I don't know. But it's the choice I've made. Some secrets are too heavy to pass on. Some truths are too devastating to share. And some acts of love, even the violent, unforgivable ones, need to stay hidden in the dark where they were born. It's January now, a new year. 2030. 5 years and 3 months since Derek died. I'm writing this final entry in a new journal, one that I'll keep until I die, but that will be destroyed before anyone finds it. This is for me, not for anyone else. A record that I can look back on and remember. Remember what I did. Remember why I did it. Remember what it cost and what it bought. Yesterday, Olivia came to me with a school project. She had to interview a family member about a time they made a difficult decision. "Grandma, what's the hardest decision you ever made?" she asked, her 7-year-old face so earnest and innocent. "The hardest decision I ever made was to pour poison into your father's tea. To take his life so that yours could be better. To become a murderer so that you could be safe. But I didn't say that. The hardest decision I ever made," I told her, "was choosing to be brave when I was scared. Choosing to protect the people I love even when it was difficult. Choosing to do what I thought was right even though other people might not understand." "That's not very specific, Grandma," Olivia said, frowning. "I know, sweetheart. Some decisions are hard to explain. But they're still the right ones." She seemed satisfied with that answer, and later I heard her telling Amy that Grandma said the hardest decisions are about protecting people you love. Out of the mouths of babes. If you've made it this far in my story, you're probably wondering how you should feel about me. About what I did. Should you condemn me? Yes, probably. I took a life. That's wrong, no matter the justification. Should you pity me? Maybe. I've lived in my own prison for 5 years, trapped by guilt and fear and the weight of what I've done. Should you understand me? I hope so. I hope that somewhere in this story, you can see how a normal woman, a grandmother, a church volunteer, someone who bakes cookies and reads bedtime stories, could be pushed to murder. Because here's the thing, I'm not special. I'm not uniquely evil or uniquely justified. I'm just someone who was abused, who was trapped, who saw no other way out. And if it could happen to me, it could happen to anyone. That's the scariest part of this whole story. Not that I committed murder, but that under the right circumstances, anyone could. Check the description box below for more stories like mine. Stories of people who were pushed past their breaking point. Stories of justice, legal or otherwise. Stories of choices that can never be undone. I don't know how much longer I have. Could be 5 years, could be 20. But however long it is, I'll spend it being the best grandmother I can be. Loving these children. Supporting Amy. Building memories that will last after I'm gone. And when I die, when they lower me into the ground next to Thomas and 3 rows over from Derek, I'll take my secret with me. Amy will cry. The children will be sad. People will say nice things about me at my funeral. And no one will ever know that Eleanor Whitmore, beloved mother and grandmother, was also a murderer who poisoned her son-in-law and got away with it. That's how this story ends. Not with justice, not with punishment, not with redemption. Just with an old woman dying with her secret intact, leaving behind people who love her and never knew the truth. Is that enough? Is that acceptable? Is that the ending this story deserves? I don't know. I'll never know. But it's the ending I've chosen. And I'm going to live with it, for however much time I have left. To everyone listening to this story, I'm not asking for your forgiveness. I'm not asking you to condone what I did or to think I'm a hero. I'm just asking you to understand that people are complicated. That sometimes victims become perpetrators. That sometimes love looks like violence. That sometimes the only way to save someone is to destroy someone else. I'm asking you to sit with the discomfort of a story that doesn't have a clear moral. A story where the villain was killed and the hero is a murderer and everyone lived happily ever after except for the dead man who maybe deserved it but also maybe didn't. I'm asking you to remember that abuse happens in nice houses in nice towns. That monsters wear human faces. That sometimes the person everyone thinks is crazy is actually the only one seeing clearly. And I'm asking you to remember me, not as Eleanor the murderer, but as Eleanor the mother who loved too much and too desperately and did a terrible thing for what she believed was a righteous reason. That's who I am. That's who I'll always be. God forgive me. Because I'm not sure I'll ever forgive myself. But I'd still do it again. And that's the truth I'll carry to my grave. If you've stayed with me through this entire journey, thank you. Thank you for listening without judging, or maybe with judging, but listening anyway. Thank you for sitting with the discomfort of a story that doesn't tie up neatly with a bow. Check the description box below for more stories that will challenge you, that will make you think about justice and revenge and the complicated morality of real human beings facing impossible choices. And wherever you're watching from, whatever town, whatever country, whatever corner of the world, remember that stories like mine are happening right now. Someone is being abused. Someone is trapped. Someone is desperate. Maybe you can be the person who helps them find a better way out than the one I chose. Maybe you can be the answer that I never found. Thank you for listening to my story. And may you never have to live it. Approx. 3,100 words, total word count, approximately 30,200 words. Author's note. This story is a work of fiction designed for storytelling purposes. It depicts serious crimes and moral dilemmas that are explored through a first-person narrative. The narrator's actions are not condoned, and the story is meant to provoke thought about abuse, desperation, justice, and the complexity of human morality. If you or someone you know is experiencing abuse, please reach out to the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-7233 or visit the hotline.org for resources and support.